Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the January 2021 meeting of the Manhattan Community Board 4, our full board meeting, the first of a new year, which, as Jeffrey and I were joking earlier, doesn't really seem like it's a new year yet. We are holding this meeting via Zoom pursuant to Governor Cuomo's Executive Order 202.1, issued back in March, which amended the open meetings law to let us do this via the internet so we can properly social distance. The public will have only one opportunity to speak tonight. That's during the public session. You have to sign up in advance, and you've got about 11 minutes or so to still do so if you have not signed up already. If you use the blue hand feature under the attendees, or is it under the chat? We want to do it by the blue hand, not by the chat, correct, Jesse?
Yeah, it's under the participant section.
Yeah, under the participant section, if you raise your blue hand, if you want to speak, you will be added to the speakers list. Brian, I think we've already got you. So that's the preliminary matters. And
I don't see the commanding officer. I do see Ryan Health Centers here, so we can.
All right, then we're going to start with item number 2 on the agenda, which is a presentation from the Ryan Chelsea Clinton Health Center. We have Dr. Zara Siddiqui with us this evening, and she's going to be presenting. So Dr. Siddiqui, the floor is yours. Please remember to unmute yourself.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me here. I'll be presenting on some updates about the COVID vaccine, and I believe I have some slides that were sent in.
There we go.
Okay, there we go. All right, so I'm Dr. Siddiqui. I'm a family medicine doctor. I've been working at Ryan Chelsea Clinton Community Health Center for about 3 years, and I've been the medical director 2 years. And I think you know about our center. It's right around the corner from a lot of you. And we've got the COVID-19 vaccine. So let me tell you a little bit about it. Let's go to the next slide. So there are, as you know, 2 approved vaccines, EUA approved. There is the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine. We have the Moderna vaccine on our site. The reason why we have the Moderna vaccine is for storage reasons. We don't have the deep freezers that's necessary for the Pfizer. So the DOH gave us the Moderna vaccine. Both are 95% effective. The most common side effects are injection site, sore arm, chills. Some people are having fevers, muscle aches, fatigue, and joint pain. People are usually getting these symptoms about the 1st or 2nd day after having the vaccine. The vaccine is 2 injections, so the Moderna vaccine is 28 days apart. So we've started vaccinating our staff. We're following the DOH guidelines. So we've gone through our staff and we've had the first vaccines done, and the second vaccines are going to be coming up in a couple of weeks. Okay, so the next slide. I wanted to talk a little bit about the common questions that people have about the vaccine. Just like I said, we have the Moderna's 2 shots apart in the upper arm, and it does not contain eggs, preservatives, or latex. If you go on to the next part. One of the common questions that we get a lot is about allergies. So when is it contraindicated for someone not to take the vaccine? And right now, the only reason not to is if you have a history of allergic reaction to the vaccine, or if you have a history of allergic reaction to any of the components of the vaccine. So a lot of people ask about what are the components in the vaccine. So I have them listed here. The polyethylene is one that comes up for a lot of people that they have questions about. So here are the ingredients. So if we go on, so We at the center do prepare for allergic reactions. We have EpiPens on hand, and the New York State and CDC has given us guidance on how to evaluate patients after. Everyone waits 15 minutes. If they have a history of anaphylaxis, which is a severe allergic reaction, they stay in our center 30 minutes for observation. So far, we haven't had any severe allergic reactions, but we're prepared to treat anyone if necessary. And then next. So we were just given approval to start vaccinating the priority groups in order, and we can only vaccinate those that we have a contract with the DOH, so we can only vaccinate as we're allowed to and as they open up groups. So first it started only with our staff, and now we may vaccinate healthcare, community healthcare partners and those living in congregate settings, for example, those in nursing homes or living in community health center settings. So we're starting that January 9th, so this Saturday, we're holding a clinic for that. And then we're going to be opening up our evenings, Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. The reason we're doing the evenings is for social distancing purposes. We realize it's going to be an increased volume of people coming in through our clinic, and we want to make sure that our waiting areas are properly socially distanced. And so our evenings, we have a little bit more room to do that. And as we're able to open it up to patients, we're really excited and hoping we could get this vaccine out to as many people as possible. I think that's it. Oh, right, the other thing. So we are going to start also COVID testing. So this is for our patients or for anyone in the community that wants a COVID test, they would need to sign up as a patient. We're going to be doing these in the evenings as well, because that is when we have space to open up our schedule. We have the PCR nasal swab. It's the nasopharyngeal swab. So it's the one that goes actually all the way back to the throat. A lot of people usually are curious about that. And it takes about 3 to 4 days for the results to come back. And so I think that might be the last one. I think that's possible. There we go. Okay. Any questions? Comments?
Do you have any questions? Go ahead, JD.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Lowell. Doctor, I have 2 questions. One, the Moderna vaccine needs 2 doses, and I believe you said 28 days between doses.
That's right.
So what do you do those 28 days? Is there any protection from the first dose, or do you just wait?
Right. So the studies have shown, so they studied about 30,000 patients. Studies have shown that it's about 40 to 50% effective after the first dose, but to get to 95% effectiveness, you do need that second dose. That's why it's really important that after the first dose, it's important to keep doing the same precautions that we are doing now. So wearing a mask, universal precautions, washing hands, social distancing. We are going to need to continue to do this for quite a while until a lot of our community is vaccinated. And like most vaccines, it also takes our body time to build the immunity. So that's when people get those symptoms like body aches, fevers. That's our body building those antibodies, which can take 1 to 2 weeks after the injection.
Thank you, Dr. Lowell. I have a second question.
Go ahead.
Doctor, do you have, probably don't have an answer to this, but once you finish inoculating your staff, how soon do you think you can start inoculating the immediate surrounding community?
Yeah, so that's, we started inoculating our staff we got the vaccine about 2 weeks ago. And now as of January 9th, we're holding the community clinics, but we are not available. It has not been allowed for us to vaccinate patients yet. We are still required to prioritize priority 1A. So that means healthcare workers. So the vaccines have only come out to 2 groups, which is community health centers like us and to the hospitals. So there are many private physicians, optometrists, dentists, physical therapists that work in private settings that are not affiliated. So now we're allowed to help vaccinate those communities. And then as soon as we're allowed to, as the DOH and state allows us to move through the other communities, for example, then I think next is going to be essential workers, police officers, teachers, and then opening up to priority patients, so high risk patients. But we're following the guidance that is given.
So there's no estimate of when, a month, 2 months?
Yeah, I'm hoping soon as possible. I can't give an exact answer. I'm hoping a few weeks. But yeah.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you, Lowell.
JD, a young, healthy guy like you, what are you worried about?
I'm worried about my community. I'm worried about my community and the total failure of the government to roll this out.
Understood. Yes, I get it.
I know.
Does anyone else have a question for Dr. Siddiqui?
I do.
Mike and then Christine.
Yeah, hi, doctor. Say, I'm curious. Do you folks do antibody testing there as well as virus testing?
Yes, we do. We have antibody testing. We've been doing that since late May, June, and that's available.
And that's a blood draw test, right?
That's correct. It's an antibody test, which antibody becomes positive at least 20 days after exposure. So it's usually 20 days after someone thinks they may have had COVID that we test.
You need an appointment to get that, I assume.
That's right. That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Before Sabrina, I see you as well. In answer to Mike's question, I'm not trying to rain on the Ryan Chelsea Clinton Health Center's parade, but I can also mention that the New York Blood Center, which is desperate for donations as usual, as an incentive to get people to donate, if you are so inclined, is doing free antibody testing for the month of January. Because I got an email reminding me it's time to donate again. Christine and then Sabrina.
Yes, doctor, in your first 1A group, does that include the homeless population, which is housed in our neighborhood?
Yeah, that's a good question. We did inquire about that, and we were told that's not included in the group.
So do you know by chance when who is going to vaccinate that group of people?
Yeah, I believe it will be in the next. So it goes into two categories. So there's street homeless, and then there's those that are in housing. So I believe the next ones would be those that are in housing.
Thank you, doctor.
Sabrina?
Yes, so I actually want to talk about my experience. I got vaccinated yesterday. I'm very lucky. I work in a community healthcare center. I'm a 1B. That means that I am an essential worker, essentially. Which is how I got COVID in the first place. But I want to talk about my experience. I don't have any side effects. It was really easy, simple. The only thing that I have is a little bit of pain in my arm. I took just ibuprofen. I'm scheduled for my second vaccine on the 2nd of this February. I just want to encourage everybody who has the opportunity to do so.
Thank you, Sabrina. Any other questions for Dr. Siddiqui? Mr. LeBron?
Thank you, Lowell. Dr. Siddiqui, very, very appreciate your presence here. The only question I have is, how does one become a patient of the Ryan Center if they're not currently insured?
Yeah, so we're a community health center, and it is part of our mission to treat all patients and to turn no one away, regardless of ability to pay. So it's easy to sign up as a patient. If you go to our website, there is an online portal. You click that button, and then you choose a site, and you could choose which site you'd like to, and then you say you're registering as a new patient, and then you fill out a form. That form will go to one of our front desk staff, who then will give you a call to go through the rest of the registration process and schedule an appointment. And pretty soon, we're hoping we're going to have an online system where you could directly schedule in without waiting for the phone call, but that's so far our process.
Thank you so much. This information is very helpful for so many in our neighborhood.
Anything else? Anyone else questions? I'm not seeing any other hands. So
Brad has his hand up.
I'm sorry, Christine, who did?
Brad and Betty.
Okay, let's go with Betty first.
Thank you for your presentation, Doctor. I just wonder if the Ryan Center has anything to do with tracing from people who tested positive.
Yeah, we're not part of the contact tracing. For our patients that we inform those that test positive, and then anyone that tests positive, it's the responsibility of our laboratory, which we use Quest Diagnostics. They turn in a list of those that test positive to the state and the contact tracing. So they're the DOH team is responsible for that part.
Thank you.
Brad, did you have your hand up?
Yes, hi, real quick. Thank you, doctor. Just so I'm clear, you have to be a patient in order to get on the list to get the vaccine at your clinic? Or is it once they announce the different levels, we can then get in line there? Or how does that work? Thank you.
Right. So I should clarify that you do have to be registered as a patient, but this vaccine is at no cost. The reason we require registration is because our electronic health record, once you're registered, it then submits. We have to submit that someone's gotten a vaccine to the statewide registry. So that's the way we do it. So if there is someone, so for example, we have a lot of people coming in on Saturday, maybe they don't plan to be our patients for a long time, or they just want to get the vaccine. You do need to register for that reason, so that for their electronic health record. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you.
I think that answers all the questions from the board. We had two people with their hands up from the public. I'm not sure if that was to get on the list for the public session or if it was for you, Dr. Siddiqui, but let's find out. John Chalice, did you have a question for the doctor, or is it more general issue?
General issue, public session.
All right, thank you. Ruth Connor, did you have this question for Dr. Siddiqui, or was it for the public session? Ruth? All right, and we're going to assume it was for the public session. Thank you very much, Dr. Siddiqui, for coming. We appreciate the information. We're very grateful to have you here, and we're very grateful to have the Ryan Chelsea Clinton Health Center in our neighborhood.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
For allowing me to speak.
Okay, the other presentation we had was the new, or relatively new, commanding officer of the Midtown North Precinct, but I still don't see, Jesse, do you know if Deputy Inspector O'Malley has arrived?
I am not seeing her in the panel.
We'll assume that something came up and prevented her. We have been trying to rotate. There are 4 precincts that serve our community district. We, as many of you know, we've been rotating through each precinct, letting the CO present current issues. We're rotating through them once a month. We will reschedule Midtown North. This would have been the first time we heard from Deputy Inspector O'Malley, who I think assumed the post in October, but she'll tell you more when she does come to a future meeting. Next, we have a public hearing on the Starrett-Lehigh building and terminal warehouse buildings in far west Chelsea. Betty or Paul, who's going to conduct the public hearing? Betty, the floor is yours.
Hi, good evening. This public hearing is for the Starrett-Lehigh and terminal warehouse rezonings, and it's focusing on comments on the draft scope for a targeted DEIS. Now, before I go into detail, which may not be necessary at this point because we will discuss it later, has anyone signed up to speak on this topic?
No one has signed up, Betty. I don't know if anybody from the public is here to speak on it who didn't sign up in advance, but.
So, so if there are no speakers, we can close the hearing.
If anybody would like to speak on this topic, they need to raise their hand in the attendees section.
Going once, going twice. All right, thank you, Betty. The public hearing is now closed.
Thank you.
We are going to go next to our public session. You had to have signed up for this already, so past 6:45. I am going to make two quick announcements before I hand this off to our first Vice Chair, Jeffrey LeFrancois, because I think these issues may come up during the public hearing. First, as many of you may have heard, at the very end of December, the NYPD and the city announced that they will be vacating Pier 76 and moving the tow pound, which is something we have been working on for a long, long time. So I don't know if that's going to come up, but that has been out there in the public. The second announcement I'm going to make, I'm not sure is out there in the public yet, so I may be making news here. As you are all aware, we have been hearing for months about the problems on West 36th Street because in their effort to move their clients out of congregate shelters, DHS chose to use 3 hotels in a 1-block radius. We have a promise from DHS that they will be moving one of those hotels this Friday to another location within our district. They're not going that far away, but we will get them off of 36th Street. It is a better facility according to the provider because they have place for a smoking area, not on the street. They have place for more activities and services to be provided. So the provider is looking forward to this. I know the residents of 36th Street are looking forward to this. And we want to thank DHS for working with us to get this done. And I'm fairly certain we're going to hear something about that during the public session. With those 2 announcements, Mr. LeFrancois, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the public session for tonight's meeting. I have a list of speakers of which I will call over 3 at a time, and our esteemed district manager will bring them over accordingly. I've also added John Chalice, who we brought over a little earlier, to our list as well, and Ruth Connor if she's here. Each person will have 2 minutes to speak. I will give a 15-second warning as your time approaches the end, and we'll take it from there. With that, the first 3 speakers, Haley Ferber, Alan Chun, and Lynn Stefanelli.
Haley Ferber let me know that she's not going to be making it, so Alan will be the first one to speak.
Thank you, Jesse. So Alan, followed by Lynn, and then Brian Weber.
Great. Good evening, everyone. My name is Alan Chun. I'm a Senior Vice President of Development at Brookfield and have been working for the better part of 8 years on the Manhattan West Development Project. It has a much longer history than that, dating back to the 80s. Community Board 4 has been very involved in intimately contributing to the project. And we think the success of the project is largely in part due to the community involvement. And we very much appreciate that. We're really proud of the relationships that we've developed over the years. And I wanted simply to come here to thank the Business Licenses and Permits Committee for working with us on the Pendry Hotel application. It's a complex program. We see it as the living room to the complex, and we want to make it as vibrant, active, and successful as possible. And I think with your inputs, we're able to do that. We look forward to the day, which is soon, that the public plaza is open to the entire community. And again, I just wanted to say thank you for your tireless advocacy on the project. All the people that we work with CB4 have invested time to understand what we're doing for the betterment of the community and for the public good. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Alan. Lynn.
I don't believe Lynn is here.
Okay. Brian.
Hi, it's Brian Weber. Thank you for bringing me over. And And Lynn is a neighbor of mine, so I will fill her in on the news. I'm Brian Weber. I'm a public member and a resident of 36 and the co-chair of the 36th Street Block Association. And I'm just going to start off with a big thank you to Community Board 4 and Lowell for sharing this information with us this evening. I'm hopeful that relocating one of the shelters from our street will alleviate some of the stress. We still have a long way to go in the West 30s. We still have, even by relocating the shelter within a 1 block radius, over 520 shelter beds. But I think this is going to give us a fighting chance. And I really want to thank the board for providing a forum for my neighbors and I to speak, and for your compassion and insight on this matter. It's been a really trying time for all of us, and it continues to be. And I just want to thank you all for being here and listening to us and working tirelessly with us to seek a solution. So with that, I don't know how many of my other neighbors will be on this night, but I want to extend a thank you from all of them for continuing to work on this. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian. Next set of speakers, Ann Santori, Susan Peters, and Randolph Barksdale. Ann, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Now I'm unmuted. I too am a member of the community on 36th Street, and despite a truly unbelievable day that we've all shared about what's going on in Washington, I barely even know how to speak. So I'll just speak from my notes that I wrote 6 hours ago before chaos happened. To be locked down for 3 months with COVID, and then to see the level of violence and disruption, our street being carpet bombed. The news that you have given us tonight is just absolutely, it's just unbelievable. And I just want to thank a couple of people. I work in my real life at Lincoln Center Theater. We have a saying in the theater when we have a huge hit. We all share this at all theaters, that there are 6 stages of production planning: inspiration, entanglement, panic, search for the guilty parties, punishment of the innocent, and awarding of prizes to non-participants. That's the way we do it in the theater. And I'm sure that's similarly in government. But I know that the people who have done this are the Manhattan Borough president, the great Gail Brewer. It's Lowell Kern, it's Joe Restuccia, it's Maria Ortiz, it's Senator Jackson, who came to our corner and saw these guards and said, "What are you doing?" And they said, "We're protecting the residents from being attacked." They were the ones, you together with this board, who have begun to bring this destroyed street, carpet bombed, back to a little life. And I just
15 seconds.
And I saw a moving van. So I believe that it might happen. And we owe this to you. Thank you. Thank you. It's a beginning of a return to real life. Thank you.
Thanks, Ann. Susan Peters.
Hi.
Hi, Susan. Go ahead.
Hi there. I'm speaking to you with information why we need to wake up to the health dangers of the cell phone antennas being spread around every corner of our city. There are currently 8,000 antennas and 4,000 more are planned. By law, it is the duty of local government to be responsible to protect their citizens' health. But in New York, the Department of Information Technology and Telecommunications has failed us. Last December, they issued a negative declaration for any health effects, ignoring thousands of peer-reviewed studies to the contrary. Who is protecting our health? Let me point out people who are protecting the health of their citizens. In September, the Netherlands House of Representatives mandated analysis and more research into 5G and exposure causing cancer, reduced fertility, birth defects. In October, the state of New Hampshire published recommendations to slow down the implementation in the entire state. New Hampshire report referred to the FCC in Washington as a captured agency with undue industry influence. December, last month in France, more than 70 mayors and elected officials called for a stop on 5G technology. Their concern, health risks. In 2020, 4 Swiss cantons, including Geneva, imposed stops on 5G towers because of uncertainty over health risks. Let me leave you with this. A typical antenna in our public corner outputs between 15,000 and 75,000 times more power than is necessary to make a 5-bar cellular connection. Thank you, and please contact me with questions.
Thanks, Susan.
Thank you.
Randolph Barksdale, followed by John Chalice. Jesse was ready.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, yes, the floor is yours.
Oh, sorry, thank you. You can hear me, yes?
Yes,
we can.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you for allowing me to speak, and thank you so much for all the work you've done for some positive news that we haven't had in, my gosh, 9 months. Even with that, though, we still have so much work to do on this street. This street has been devastated. I've lived here for over 20 years. This week, a slice of pizza has been thrown at me. Last week, I wasn't allowed to walk unless I gave one of the residents $1. It's still, I mean, a deplorable street to live at, and only in the past few months. So my point is, thank you so much for your work, but there's still a lot of work to be done. I don't know why this street has been so devastated in comparison to friends of mine that live on other areas. Many of them, they have no experience of what we're all dealing with here tonight. So thank you for your help, but please, the work is not done. It's still, there's still a lot of work to be done. The street is nothing near what it was even a year ago. Thank you.
Thanks, Randolph. John, you're up.
Thank you. I hope people aren't getting tired of hearing about 36th Street, but I am going to echo a little bit of what was said earlier. I have really 2 points to make. First is a very hearty thank you to Community Board 4, the leadership and the membership, Lowell, Maria, Joe in particular, Leslie, Bogosian Murphy, all the people who stepped forward and made this happen. Honestly, we felt for a long time that we didn't have any allies at all. I'd also like to thank Senator Jackson and Borough President Brewer for their commitment and support. I'm very hopeful, speaking on behalf of the board here and the people who live in this building, that the news that Lowell mentioned earlier will mean an improvement. As Randolph pointed out, you know, we're going to go from an 11 to a 7 on the pain scale. It'd be nice to get it back down to a 2 at some point in time. I hope vaccination and the ability to move people experiencing homelessness back into their settings where they can have full social service support will make that a reality. But thank you. The battle isn't quite done, but this has been a huge help, and we appreciate all you've done, and we will remember it. Thank you.
Thanks, John. And just to note, Assemblymember Gottfried also specifically supported the request of Community Board 4 and residents of the block, along with Borough President Gail Brewer and State Senator Jackson, in our effort to relocate one of the hotels to another in the community. Just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Sure. I see no hands up in the attendees, and that finalizes those we have signed up on the public session this evening. Jesse, I see you waving your hand. Are you looking to speak on a topic in particular tonight?
No, I'm not. I just would notice that Lisa Wager, while she signed up late.
How could I forget?
Yeah, you actually have two, Jeffrey, Lisa and Bernard Friedman.
Thank you. Lisa?
She's coming over now.
Okay.
Lisa, you with us?
Oh, okay. I got the part. Hi. I'm Lisa Wager, the Director of Government Community Relations at the Fashion Institute of Technology, the SUNY College, on 27th, between 7th and 8th. Welcome back. I hope everyone had a safe and festive holiday season. I want to just briefly talk about our plans for reopening. The college, of course, continues to prioritize the health and safety of the entire FIT community and our neighbors. And our plans for reopening have been approved by SUNY. And as was the case for the fall semester, all plans continue to be subject to the directives of SUNY and the state of New York, and of course, the unpredictable nature of COVID-19. Winter session is already up and running. It started January 4th. It goes through the 20th. Spring semester begins on January 25th. It runs through May 19th. All winter and spring 2021 classes, with the exception of very few classes in the School of Graduate Studies, will continue to be offered online and remote only. Some of those classes, as we face a few more months of social distancing and perhaps now have time to pursue or expand interests for which last year we didn't have a New York Minute. Does your career need more creativity? Do your skills need some spark? Does your talent need a tune-up? FIT has programs that helps professionals transform enthusiasm into enterprise and elevate experience into a satisfying career. We offer credit and non-credit courses in business, design, computer technology, marketing, and of course, fashion, as well as a range of certificate programs to help you enter and advance in the fashion and related industries. With short seminars, multi-session courses, and flexible schedules, weekdays, evenings, and weekends, you can learn at a time and pace you can manage and afford. These courses are all remote, which means they're synchronous, so everyone's taking class at the same time in real time with a real professor, and that does create a bit of a sense of community. Some of the hot topics courses available this spring include personal branding and marketing, contemporary rug design, fragrance awareness, and design for social impact.
15 seconds.
Thank you. Registration is open now and throughout the spring for non-credit courses and for some of the certificate programs. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you when we're not all in these little boxes.
Thank you, Lisa. And it was, who was the final, Jesse? I wrote it down. Bernard Friedman. Mr. Friedman, are you there?
Yeah, here I am. Hi, guys. Just gonna add my huge thank you. I live here on 36 between 8th and 9th, and really appreciate it, guys. No idea, maybe you do, but just like the level that we've been dealing with, and it's just really added another layer since the outbreak, since COVID. I bought my apartment here on 36th Street half a year before outbreak, and it's just I've had people come up to me and say, "I'm so sorry," not about the temporary homeless, but just in New York in general. And I told them then, and I tell them now, having a community board like you guys, it's just, I love this place, bad times and good. And you guys, and really from us on 36th Street, we really appreciate your persistence, and with the government doing so little. Joe Restuccia, Maria Ortiz, and really congratulations on the Pendry Hotel's beautiful building, the Toe Pound. Big congratulations on that. I'm so happy to be here, and I really totally didn't anticipate that news. But from me and all of my neighbors, thanks so much. That's all.
Thank you. Lowell, if you'll indulge me, Twee, who doesn't have access to a microphone, wanted to say something as a member of the public in the public session, and I'm going to read her comments if that's okay.
Go right ahead.
All right, Twee Pham, who is a member of the community board but is raising something as a member of the public for the public session tonight. As president of the 23rd, 24th Chelsea Tenant Association with almost 250 tenants, We've been battling workers not wearing masks on a continual basis. In addition, common hallway windows have been sealed, preventing air circulation, a more pointed problem given the COVID-19 crisis and the consequence of at least 3 tenants being infected as a result. I have raised residential air circulation for common areas as a member of the Chelsea Council Block Associations and also as a steering committee member of the West Side Neighborhood Alliance. Both groups provided a positive, that was for the previous speaker. Both groups provided a positive response that air circulation is also important in residential buildings and not just in commercial buildings and schools. In addition, Housing Conservation Coordinators is preparing for a forum about this by the end of January or the beginning of February. How can CB4 get involved? Tui, I think this is thank you for raising this. I don't know if HHS has taken residential air circulation up and how this can be dealt with in terms of, as I read it, building workers not wearing masks, but thank you for raising this.
Jeffrey, I'm happy to work with Tui and Maria and Joe in finding a path forward on this.
Perfect. Thank you for that.
Jesse.
Okay, thanks everybody. And with that, Mr. Chair, I declare the public session closed.
Thank you, Jeffrey. As I promised, we were going to get Deputy Inspector Megan O'Malley, and she's now here joining us by telephone. Deputy Inspector O'Malley is now the commanding officer of the Midtown North Precinct and was promoted to that position back in October, I believe. And she's here to give us an update on what's going on in Midtown North.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Sorry for the tardy appearance and also the telephone appearance, but as you know, it's kind of been a hectic day in the country. So luckily everything is nice and peaceful here in Midtown, but we did have a couple of protests that warranted my attention. I'm sorry that I missed the beginning of the meeting. I don't know if we discussed specific areas of Midtown North or not. And I'm not sure that at this juncture you want to revisit it, but if there's any points, maybe if you guys could send us the minutes from earlier, we'd be happy to sort of, prepare a response and get back to you on a follow-up call or, at the next meeting. I can certainly have a more comprehensive appearance. But, we finished the year in Midtown North down about 30% in crime. Unfortunately, those statistics are really just more of a reflection of the fact that we have far less people here than ordinarily, between tourists and, residents who have moved elsewhere, and as well as, diminished business capacity in several of our buildings. We have seen, just like other precincts that, touch the community board, some unprovoked attacks by some mentally disturbed people. All of those have been close to arrest at this point. Luckily, nobody was seriously injured. There have been 1 or 2 on, elderly victims. Obviously, it's extremely concerning to us. And so we're just doing our part and hoping that the city can sort of come up with a more comprehensive plan to really assist, the housing vulnerable and the mentally ill, population that seems to be, increasing every single day here. Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you, Meg.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm not sure how far you want me to go or if you have questions or.
If there's anything else you want to update us on, that'd be great. Otherwise, if you're willing to take questions, I will solicit questions from the board and the public.
Yeah, why don't we just move to, for the sake of everyone's time, your time, since you guys have already been at this for quite some time. I'm okay with questions.
Mr. Corvino, I see your hand first.
Hi, Deputy Inspector O'Malley. Thank you for joining us. My committee, I co-chair the Transportation Planning Committee. We had a letter before the NYPD about the precinct block closures that happened in the wake of the protests surrounding George Floyd. We never really got a satisfactory answer as to why the precinct blocks were closed for weeks on end without due notification of the DOT and the community board itself.
But I can't speak for what happened when I wasn't here, which I was in Brooklyn during the protest. I can give a general statement, though, in terms of probably all precinct station house security, just in kind of what you saw today, to be honest with you. You know, when there is momentum in a crowd, you know, they have the ability to overthrow a building. And there were definitely, you know, where I was in Brooklyn, there were multiple police precincts that were, you know, sort of attacked. So I can't speak specifically about what the layout here was. I don't know when it was done.
I'm sorry, Deputy Inspector. I'm not questioning the justification for the closure. I'm asking why the police department did not inform the DOT and the community boards as required by the city charter.
Okay, well, I think that's probably going to be.
The ground would not preclude the department from making those due notifications.
I would say exigent circumstances, probably. You know, if we're at a position where we're sort of battening down the hatches and putting up security defenses for station houses, I would think that, you know, that was probably more of an immediate need. But again, if you're speaking on an overall agency thing, that's probably a response that should come from an agency head and not from a local precinct commander. Like I said, I wasn't here at the time. I can just speak from my own personal experience, which I'm sure mirrored several places in other parts of the city.
It always seems like the buck gets passed when it comes to accountability with the NYPD. But thank you for your time.
Well, you're asking me a question about something that happened in June, and I've made it clear that I can't answer it at this point in time because I was not here in June.
Right, but you can make excuses, so thanks.
I'm not making excuses. I can tell you from personal experience what I saw and why.
Well, again, whatever was going on the ground, it would not preclude the NYPD from emailing and notifying the DOT and the community boards that were affected. And it would go to building.
I think we need some respect.
And it would go to building community trust between the departments.
Okay.
Point of order.
Point of order. Dale, you've made your point. Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you. Joe, you had your hand up for a question for Deputy Inspector O'Malley.
Yes. I'm a co-chair, Joe Rasuccia, co-chair of Housing, Health, and Human Services. And you know, we've been struggling with the homeless hotels. And we'd just like to know how we can work with the Midtown North the best in order to make the area around the skyline more secure. We have lots and lots of issues from many of the block associations, lots of neighbors in that area. And we know you're working on it, but what can we do to better coordinate with you on this? Because we need to make those blocks between 48th and 51st Streets safer than they are today.
I totally agree, and we're sort of in a similar position. We've spoken in the past with this. I've spoken, we were on a meeting with some members of the board when I first got here. You know, unfortunately, we don't have any insight into where these shelters are placed. And then, you know, once they're placed, you know, we're not really privy sort of to the inhabitants. Usually, when a brand new shelter usually comes into a neighborhood pre-COVID, there's usually lots of like preliminary meetings and a discussion about the client base. You know, are they working, ready to work, that kind of thing? Or are they home? Like, are there any preclusions to what kind of, say, paroled offenders can be there or any restrictions? And the way that, you know, this unfolded last year, there's just people everywhere. So there's definitely security concerns. We're trying to do our best to, you know, keep in contact with DHS and try to see who's registered here because it affects crime. You know, if we have several parolees here, there is a good chance that, you know, some of these parolees are reoffending. And that certainly, you know, changes the crime climate in the neighborhood. What we haven't been able to do is really have a sit down or a Zoom meeting or any sort of connection with DHS to find out like what kind of updated records can they give us or what kind of details can they provide us on the, you know, say the proposed security that's supposed to be there. And that's something, if you guys can help us connect with them on, we would really like that, you know, and along with some community input. I know that there's been recent discussion about moving another hotel over into that area, which I think just based on, you know, there's been a half dozen added over there in the past 6 months. I don't know that we can withstand that sort of influx of any population, you know, let alone a population that requires services.
So the board would like to follow up with you on this, because in the past 3.5 weeks, incidents around the skyline have really ramped up, and we've gotten an incredible number of complaints. So we're going to ask Jesse to reach out to you to see if we can set up something with DHS specifically about the public safety on that series of blocks. It's the stories are making our hair curl, you know?
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, every single day I drive through there. It's, you know, it's 2-3 blocks from the precinct, and there's constantly, you know, whether it's an ambulance or a series of police cars with an ambulance, you know, we definitely have an increased population there that's struggling with mental health.
Right. Thank you so much. We'll follow up with you.
Thank you.
David Warren.
Hi, congratulations on your new appointment. Welcome to the neighborhood. Just two quick questions for the future. How do you plan to handle the parking of personal cars of the police officers around the precincts, and also the official vehicles? I mean, I understand sometimes they have to be in places where, you know, it's inconvenient, whether it's a bike lane, but it just seems a lot of times maybe it's noticeable with it's unnecessarily. They're stopping to get coffee or do something personal. How do you plan to minimize that? Obviously, you can't control 100%, but how do you plan to lessen that while you're on tour with this precinct? And thank you again for coming.
Oh, no problem. Thank you. I think that's a very valid point. I think sometimes, and this kind of lends to something that was discussed a few minutes ago, building trust with the community, right? Everyone seems very understanding, right? If they're driving down 10th Avenue and the lane is blocked by police cars outside the skyline, there's probably some sort of emergency. But now if you're driving down 8th Avenue and there's a car in the bike lane and you look up and you see 2 cops, you know, getting a bagel and coffee, you know, it's frustrating. I'm sure it's probably a little bit more than that. That's something that, you know, we need to instill in some of our, you know, younger officers, particularly, that, you know, what might seem like convenience for them, you know, it was quicker to do this, is a tremendous inconvenience to the public. And, you know, it gives off a perception, obviously, that we don't care, and a sense of arrogance that is, you know, 100% unintentional. But it's just something that I really, you know, want to instill in them, that we are members of this community and we care about it, and we care about the people within it. And, you know, we play by the same rules as everybody else, you know, so that there's a difference, especially in Midtown Manhattan, in where we park our car. You know, leaving a car in the middle of the street when you're running to an emergency job is one thing, but leaving it because you didn't want to park and walk around the block to a non-priority, you know, maybe just made somebody's late for a doctor's appointment or to pick up their child. So it's definitely something that we will be working on here internally. And I hope that in the coming weeks, you guys see an improvement and are, you know, pleased.
All right. Do you have time for one more question, Deputy Inspector?
Sure, as long as the protest remains peaceful.
Marty DeCat.
Deputy Inspector, I also want to express my appreciation for your being here tonight and for joining our community. I'm going to ask a question that I hope becomes part of a longer term discussion, and one that you may not be able to immediately answer, but certainly not officially, and maybe you can give your own voice to it. There's been a lot of protest about police departments in recent months, so that there is a movement that is described as defund the police. I think that happens to be a totally wrong descriptor, and would much rather have heard people talk about refunding the police so that your agencies could have the necessary skills to deal with the homelessness, et cetera, that you already responded to in some of the previous questions. So with regard to refund the police, and with the mind that Community Board 4 is in many ways a policy organization, could you make some comments about what your reactions have been to the refund the police movement?
I'm sorry, to the refund or the defund?
Well, I switched it. I said refund, but because that's my position. I don't think defund is appropriate. I don't imagine a society without people like you doing the work that you're doing. But nevertheless, agencies like yours is going to have to deal with that movement. And a lot of places are talking about refunding, that is moving funds around so that you can have the various skills you need to deal with more than occasional times that you meet people that you might not really know how to deal with.
Right. Well, I think that everyone agrees with the spirit and even the logic and the statistics often behind the the quote defund the police movement, right? It's not necessarily anti-police. It's really just, I know several people, especially where I had previously been assigned, they look at the budget and they see the money and they see like, this is money that could be used for other social services, with the idea, of course, that if we take money from certain areas of the police department and we invest in our youth, we're investing in our future and hopefully, avoiding the sort of critical issues that the police are needed for. I think, unfortunately, that's a longer, like you said, this is a longer term thing. So while we may have shifted X amount of dollars in this fiscal year, that may pay off in a few years. Did it pay off right now? And how do we deal with, what in some circles is seen as like a knee-jerk reaction? You watch sort of the criticism that many city council members faced, right? There were those who out and out, voted against the budget because some said it didn't go far enough. And, then there were those who said, like, I'm going to say yes, because I have projects that need to be funded now, because I don't have the answers to how to, sort of revise or adjust this funding just now. I don't have it in the 3 weeks that this gained momentum. And, as several people are finishing their terms, like their final terms, they've pledged to work on it over the years. I think that the department, is committed, obviously, to sort of sharing the wealth in terms of like agreeing that there are certain aspects, that maybe we shouldn't be the primary agency on. But we've become the primary agency over necessity, or maybe just lack of a better vendor. And I think that's something that, again, we talk about it right now, right? With homeless and with mental illness, we're the best suited. So the question becomes, how do we build an agency or agencies that are truly the best suited to it? Or what do we give to our department to invest in us, even more so that we become truly the best suited? And that's obviously like a question that's going to, involve many, many minds in a think tank and try to figure out. Unfortunately, I think there's just several agencies right now, and the way it is, we've taken away responsibilities, but we haven't necessarily come up with who's going to accept those responsibilities now they've been removed from the police department. And we're obviously, we're seeing the signs of it here in Midtown in so many ways.
Thank you, Deputy Inspector. I think that's a really great answer. We were on the level of generalities, and I hope that over the weeks and months that come, we can get more specific about these issues. Thank you so much for that nice answer.
Oh, no problem.
I'm going to do one more quick question. This is the last question we're taking for the Deputy Inspector. Dolores?
It's actually not a question. I just wanted to remind my fellow board members that the Midtown Police Precinct Council meets the third Tuesday of every month. And Deputy Inspector O'Malley, since she has begun her tour here, has been working with the members of the community that live around the area. And I welcome all of you to be participating. We really don't have a lot of our board members that are coming to these meetings. And a lot of the concerns and conversation that we're having now do happen during these meetings, and greater participation will allow us to focus much more thoroughly on these issues that we're concerned about as a broader community. So the information on those meetings are always available through the newsletter that Jesse and team send out, but happy to add you to the list as I am the president of the council at this time.
Thank you, Dolores. And thank you, Deputy Inspector O'Malley, for joining us. We appreciate the update, your time, and your answers.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I look forward to meeting you in a more extended Zoom and obviously ultimately in person. And like Laura said, you know, please visit us. The community council does a tremendous job, I think. And it's just always a pleasure to speak with them each week. So I wish everybody a happy new year, and I'll, you know, quote, see you all soon.
Thank you again so much.
Thank you. Take care.
All right, moving on quickly. Any questions about the agenda? Okay, I'll take a motion.
Move to adopt.
Second. Anyone second? Thank you, Christine. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Agenda is adopted. Any questions about last month's minutes? Not seeing any. I'll entertain a motion.
Twee had sent me some minor grammar changes that have to be done to the minutes. So I just want to put those in there. They're nothing content related. It's just some grammar stuff that we'll link to.
All right.
Why don't you give them to me? I mean, you know, aren't I supposed to be doing that?
You'll get them, Mike, I promise.
Mike, you'll get them. I just got them today.
All right. I'll entertain a motion to adopt the minutes as
move to adopt as amended.
Thank you. I saw a bunch of hands for a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The minutes are adopted. Okay, we're going to move into our elected officials. Normally we would give the honor of going first to our borough president, but she kind of likes listening to us, so she's going to stick around for a while. So I'm going to open the floor to our city council member, the speaker of the city council, Corey Johnson.
Thank you, Lowell. Hi, everyone. Happy New Year. And I know you guys mentioned it already, but 2020 was a really difficult year. And today is a really painful day for the country watching what's happening in Washington, D.C. You know, I'm hopeful that 2021 will be better than 2020 was. You know, I'm not going to speak for long because I know that Gail is here and I think there are other elected officials that want to speak as well. So I'll try to just run through some quick updates. On COVID, I think you've seen the city has started to deploy vaccinations to populations that are most vulnerable to the virus. And I know many people, myself included, are really concerned about whether or not these vaccines are reaching people fast enough and whether the right groups are being prioritized. Again, I share those concerns and members of the council can share those concerns. We've seen some changes in the past couple of days that shows some marked improvement, including the addition of 2 new 24/7 mega sites with promises of more sites in that vein to come. But clearly there is more we can and should be doing, which is why the council's having an oversight hearing on Tuesday to review the distribution of the vaccines and ensure that the city is doing everything possible to administer it in an equitable, safe, and efficient manner. This will be the council's second hearing on vaccine distribution. And nothing is really more important than our ability to quickly vaccinate as many New Yorkers as possible right now. And we have to make sure that it is done right. Despite all these COVID concerns, we got some good news over the holiday break that CB4 has been integral to. The tow pound on Pier 76 will finally be moving at the end of the month. And I know a lot of the people on the board have worked for a very long time to make this happen. It has literally taken decades, but we did it. When I became speaker, one of my first meetings was with the mayor's office to discuss how to find a new site for the tow pound. And luckily, I think that the governor's pressure is what really brought this to bear in getting the city to move. So together with local stakeholders, we will work on an interim and long-term plan for the pier. It was also great to see last week the opening of the new Moynihan train station. CB4 has been a really important part of that, again, for a very, very long time. It's been years in the making. It's a welcome improvement to our transportation network on the West Side. Hopefully this builds momentum for greater investment in public transportation. And personally, I just want to say that one of my close personal friends that many of you, very close friend of mine, who many of you knew, Michael Evans, who was the president of the Moynihan Development Corporation tragically died in March, and he was only 40 years old. And I've been thinking about Michael a lot. He dedicated 9 years of his life to that project, and died just 9 months before it actually opened. And there's a really nice plaque inside commemorating him and commemorating the work he did to make it happen. So I just wanted to mention Michael, who many of you got to work with over the years on the project. I want to really thank Community Board 4 for the work that you all have done on the NYCHA development projects after a very long and arduous process that we are very close to that the working group is very close to finalizing recommendations to preserve NYCHA developments in CB4. There's a lot of people to thank, but I want to single out Joe Restuccia, who has really been just integral to these conversations, to making sure that people were really heard and that they had a meaningful voice in the process. It has been a long process. The administration wanted to move forward without any real process last year, and the elected officials, all of us, Gail, Brad, Dick, myself, and Jerry, all banded together with the community board to make sure that there was going to be a working group that was real, that had teeth, that would actually make real recommendations. And I'll tell you that a lot of the process involved, I'm not sure we would have gotten through without CB4, literally, and we wouldn't have got through without Joe. I mean, Joe literally did a lot of therapy sessions with people in a really great way. I also want to thank the tenant leaders at Fulton and Elliott Chelsea, Miguel and Darlene and Mary and all of the folks that have just been really wonderful in that. And so, Joe, thank you. I'm sure you'll talk about it at some point, but this wouldn't be moving forward without you and your leadership. So thank you very much for that. And, you know, besides Joe, I know Elzora was involved, Betty McIntosh was involved, Michael Noble was involved, Hector Vasquez was involved, and again, Joe was really the ringleader here. So I want to thank all of them. CB4's participation and leadership was instrumental in keeping this going. City planning. Last month, I introduced a major plan to help streamline and make sense of the city's very confusing and complex city planning regulations. It's called comp planning. It was introduced at the council at the last stated meeting of 2020. It's to streamline our city's long-term planning processes. It's posted online. It's almost 100 pages long. It's very detailed. It gives the community boards, I think, a lot more of a voice actually in the planning process moving forward in an ongoing way, less of a reactive way, more of a proactive way to empower the community boards. So we would love your feedback. We'll hear the legislation sometime this year, and CB4 really are the pros when it comes to land use. So please take a look at it if you have a chance. So I'm just gonna keep it at that. Thank you all for having me.
Corey, do you have time? There's a question from the public. I don't know if it's actually a question, or I also see Maria waving her hand around. Do you have time for a couple questions?
Yeah, very quickly. I haven't told people this, but I told Lowell this. I became, because of Gail Brewer, and she could tell you the story, I became a freshman this week. I'm starting college. Today's my third day of university. I am a freshman at undergrad at 38 years old, and today is day 3. So I ducked out of orientation to hop on this Zoom right now. So I'm missing part of orientation right now. So if we could keep it quick, I would really appreciate it. So I could hop back on. I started at Columbia School for General Studies, which is where Gail Brewer graduated at 47 years old. And she's the one who got me to apply. And so at 38 with 0 college credits, I'm starting my college education part-time online in the evenings to not take away from my day job. So yes, I'm happy to take a couple of quick questions.
Maria, go ahead.
Wonderful. Bravo, Corey. Yes, bravo, bravo. I love that, Corey. Congratulations. I just wanted to ask you a quick question about 36th Street. I know that, you know that I'm the co-chair of Housing, Health, and Human Services, and I know that Gail wrote a letter that Senator Jackson, and I believe Gottfried and CB4 also signed on to about a shelter relocating and some other issues. But I'm curious your thoughts about one of the shelters on 36th Street being relocated to 40th.
To 40th Street.
Or where, yeah.
Well, I mean, clearly the homeless population that was moved to hotels was meant to be temporary for public health reasons during the height of the pandemic. I think that there have been concerns about a density issue on 36th Street and 37th Street. I think we need to make sure that people are getting the services that they need. We're not compromising anyone's public health. And I want to continue to work with my colleagues like Gail and Brad and Dick and Jerry and the community board on looking at what a good long-term solution would be to this.
Okay. All right, thanks, Dolores.
On the homeless issue. So Corey, thank you for showing up this evening. Unfortunately, you hadn't had the opportunity to join us over the past few months where we have heard incredibly sorrowful and scary stories from the folks on that block. What I'm asking this evening is not why we have not seen you in this conversation. What I'd like to know is if you can commit for the rest of your stint as speaker to use the full weight of the speaker's office to start working on a long-term solution for the housing situation for our homeless. Because right now, we are not seeing leadership. We would have expected that our council member would be our voice. And I did not see your voice. I know you had a lot of the things that were pressing, but you are also the speaker. And there is a lot of weight there. We would like to see that weight in crafting the forward planning on how we prevent this type of non-planning, this not able to site properly where we have relocations. The crisis is not an excuse, and I don't need you to respond now. I just want to be on record to say I would like to see the speaker's office visibly engaged in this planning and conversation going.
Well, your facts are wrong, Dolores, and the tone of your question I take offense at. I think for whatever reason, you've always been slightly confrontational with me for years. So I'm not surprised at the tone tonight that you've taken. This is kind of the way that you've always
my issue is with the
way
office.
You've always interacted
my
with
issue
me.
is with the office. Speak from the office, not from the
about a year ago. About a year ago.
Corey, hang on a second. Corey, hang on a second. I don't need any of this at this meeting. This is not personal. Dolores asked a question. You know, maybe her tone was off. Maybe it wasn't. That's up to Dolores how she wants to ask it. I'm not going to let this degenerate into a fight between the two of you right here and right now.
It's not a fight. I responded. She asked a question. I responded. And I'm saying how I felt. She said how she felt. That's fine. It's totally fine. A year ago, I released a long-term plan that I worked on for 3 years on homelessness in New York City. It is online. It is a plan that talks about permanent housing. It talks about supportive housing. It talks about reforms that need to be made to the shelter system. And it requires a significant amount of money, and it requires some state action as well. My office has been engaged nonstop with block associations, with the police precincts, with multiple community boards on the issues related to hotels across the city. Multiple council members, there are 51 of us, have similar concerns about the siting process and how it takes place. So all I'll say is that I worked for 3 years on a plan. We released it. It's almost 100 pages long. The foremost homeless service providers and experts in New York City stood with the plan and said it is the best plan that they've seen in 20 years on how to deal with homelessness. It's the YouTube video of that is posted online. The press conference was in January of 2020. So it happened exactly a year ago before the pandemic hit. The pandemic changed things. A lot of things were done on an emergency basis because of a public health crisis. And the city then saw a $9 billion loss in dollars going into our adopted budget for July 1st. So many of the things that were talked about in that forward-thinking plan on housing, on preventing homelessness, on preventing evictions, on working with communities, on creating long-term psychiatric care beds, on finding places for behavioral health, those things we were not able to fund in the budget. The state took $2 billion from us in the final 60 days of the budget process, and we still haven't gotten any money from Washington. Now, my hope is that with John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock winning last night and a unified Democratic Congress in Washington and Chuck Schumer being the incoming majority leader, that we will see some state and local aid in a significant way come to New York City, which Mitch McConnell refused to do. If we see that money in the first 3 to 6 months of this year, we could fold that money into many of the things that were outlined in that more than 100-page plan. So all of these things that we're talking about as it relates to homelessness are not individual sites, though there are problems on individual sites. It is a much more holistic issue that needs to be solved through citywide policy with state and federal intervention and help and enough budget dollars to be put behind to get it done. It's incredibly expensive. I think there's been a massive failure for a long time. And this council in the last 3 years of my being speaker has held more hearings on the Department of Homeless Services than I believe any council before. If you go back and you look at the number of hearings that we've had on the number of children in homeless shelters, on mentally ill people that are not getting served properly in homeless shelters. We have had oversight hearing over oversight hearing. We've passed legislation. One bill that we were planning to pass before the pandemic hit, but we couldn't because of the budgetary situation, was a bill that would have significantly increased the voucher amount of city vouchers that individuals and families get to be placed into apartments. Christine Quinn, my predecessor, both in this seat and in the council, was the main advocate for it. She runs Women in Need, which has, of course, a shelter in MCB4. It's a bill that all of the providers have rallied behind. It would have significantly increased the voucher amount so that people could get out of hotels and into their own apartments. We didn't have the money because of the budget deficit to pass that. So without us being able to spend the money, get the money from Washington, all of this got compounded because of the public health crisis. So the only way to actually deal with this in a holistic way, instead of in a triage-like way, is to get a significant amount of HUD funds, social service funds, and money to come in to be able to put forward some of these changes that we need. I look forward to continuing to work on that. Whenever Lowell has reached out to me on these issues, he and I have been in touch on these issues. Joe and I have talked about these things multiple times. I'm always happy to talk to Joe and Lowell. Christine has reached out to me multiple times over the last few months. I've been in touch with them. My wonderful staff, Matt Green and Carl Wilson, I think work 7 days a week on these issues. And I'm extraordinarily grateful for them, for their attention, for getting me on the phone at 11 o'clock at night and telling me what's going on in the community. So I will continue to work on it with the members of this board, with my staff, with the hope that we get the state and federal support that we need to solve this long-term issue that is hurting so many vulnerable people. And there could be a surge in homelessness when the eviction moratorium potentially elapses on May 1st.
All right, Corey.
Thank you in this public forum, Corey, for stating the vision that you had worked on. What was important was the folks of 36th and 37th Street heard that. We needed to hear that you have a plan, and we needed to hear that as speaker, when you have an opportunity, you will work towards putting that plan together. That's what we've been needing to hear for the last few months, and we haven't had that opportunity. So thank you for that.
Just so you know, Dolores, you weren't on the call, but I had a call, I believe, in September with Joe and JD and Lowell and other people on this board, Zoom, to explicitly discuss that. There were some concerns related to the letter, which is why my office didn't sign on to it. It wasn't that we didn't care about the issue. Congressman Nadler's office also didn't sign on, and I believe State Senator Hoylman's office didn't sign on to that letter as well. We have worked on these issues constantly, and I've talked about homelessness the last many years, the last 7 years I've been in the council, and especially over the last 3 years as I've been working on that report that we released a year ago. So I apologize if it was not talked about in a way that felt specific to 36th or 37th Street, but I have been talking about this issue for a very long time. My mother is a homeless services provider. She has been for 15 years. She does homeless street outreach, and she works at the only large shelter on the North Shore in Massachusetts. So I come from a family that works on these type of issues, and I'm always happy to engage on a way that we can help serve homeless New Yorkers while at the same time ensuring that providers and facilities are operating in a way that serves those clients in the best way possible, and make sure that we're responsive to the local blocks and community boards that are concerned about some of the things that have happened. I heard Joe ask a question earlier to the deputy inspector about the skyline. My office has been working on that issue as well over the last 6 months. Before Eric left my office, he was talking to me about the skyline constantly about it. I know we were in conversations with the provider, who I believe is Acacia up at that location. So I'm glad you asked tonight. I look forward to continued engagement on this, and I'm always happy to talk with Lowell or Maria. Maria was on that Zoom as well. I apologize for not mentioning that. And Joe, as we continue to work work on these really difficult issues right now.
Corey, do you have time for 2 more questions? There's
Sure.
2 more hands up. All right, so the first one was from a member of the public, Philip Ellison. Mr. Ellison, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
No, sorry, this is from the Public Advocate's Office. No question here. I'm just waiting for after the electeds, like Linda Rosenthal and our borough president, just to chat. No
Gotcha. I'm sorry, I didn't recognize your name. And then Brian Weber. This is going to be another 36th Street question, Corey. Jesse, can you move Brian over?
Got it. Coming over now.
Brian, go ahead.
In the meantime, can I ask where Corey, is there that 200-page, the 100-page planning document? Where can we find that?
I'll have Matt and Carl send it out. Yeah,
Dale posted the links.
Dale has already posted the link in the chat, Paul.
Hello, thank you for bringing me over. Corey, I don't want to take up too much of your time since I know you're missing orientation, so thank you. I'm a resident on West 36th Street. I've spoken with Matt, Carl, Eric ad nauseum about the situation on West 36th Street. All of what you said is fine and good. This was a very specific issue. And I will tell you, and it's not something that you can defend, the residents of West 36th Street were let down by you on this matter. We had been asking for something very specific, which is a reduction in the number of shelters on our street. It has been an ongoing dangerous situation. In the months since the shelter has moved on to 36th Street, I personally know of 8 neighbors who have been physically assaulted, not just insulted, but assaulted. And this was a serious matter and a serious crisis that needed immediate attention. And I contacted your office. I've written you personally asking for assistance with a very specific matter, not long-range issues and not there was no excuse for what was occurring here. It was an issue of where these shelters were sited, and we needed to find a solution. And I'm just telling you, we were incredibly let down by you as our council member for not showing up for us, providing us with additional security at the hotels and providing us for additional cleanup crews did not prevent my neighbor from losing 4 teeth. It did not prevent a 16-year-old from being groped. It did not prevent a shop owner from having to run down the street this week to a police station. And all of what you're saying is great on a policy level, but this was a very pragmatic level on the street. And I just think you needed to be aware of it. And I think you needed to be called out for it, because we were wondering where you were, and we missed you during this. And we really wish you were here, front and center, speaking on our behalf and joining the community in its request to reduce the density of shelters in the West 30s. Thank you.
First of all, I never received any personal communication from you, and I don't know if you have my email address, but I didn't.
I do. And on those letters, I CC'd your office as well. Okay. And your office has been in touch with me.
Yeah. So I'm just telling you, I never received any personal communication from you. So I know that Matt and Carl and Eric have been working on these issues. Again, I told you that I've been talking to, and I've talked to Joe and Lowell, and I've been working with the other elected officials. You know, I do think that, you know, we have to be careful about how we cite things in a dense way in communities. And we'll continue to work to try to make sure that things are safe on 36th Street. I just want to say that no one wants a shelter on their block. And I know the issue here is not you not wanting a shelter. The issue here is the number of people and the density involved, that there are 900 people, I believe, that are on the block or the surrounding block. And that is the issue. If it was 300, it would be different. But it is once the city enters a contract, which the council isn't part of that process. Members last week, not in this district, but in Queens, in the Bronx, in Brooklyn, were all contacting my office and the mayor's office because DHS suddenly cited shelters in their district over the Christmas holiday. And they didn't want the shelters in their district. So this is a long-term issue. And again, there's no way to get out of this without some of the long-term planning that I talked about before. So I'm sorry, Brian, that you feel let down. I'm going to continue to have my office work on these issues with the other elected officials, Gail, Dick, Brad, Jerry, and the other folks in coordination with CB4 to see how we can be helpful.
Corey, I've got two more that I don't think are.
Well, no, I have to go.
All right, they weren't 36th Street, so if you got to run, you got to run.
Yeah, I have to run. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Colin, Hector, sorry about that. Gail, you glad you waited?
Yes, of course. Always love being at Board 4. There's a few things. First of all, just in terms of the police issues, and I do. Want you to know, and I think you do know this, but Board 4 may be in the best position. There's this listening tour because the mayor appointed 3 people, as you know, to be the ones that are going to decide police reform in the city of New York. Jennifer Austin and the head of the foundation, Robin Hood, and of course, Arbor Rice, New York Urban League. Long story short, I did the moderation for the listening tour in Southern Manhattan, and I listened to the one in Northern Manhattan on a Zoom. Southern Manhattan was in person. The reason I mention that is I don't know that this, because I listened to the staff and I'm listening to, you know, many years of this topic. I think Board 4 should really try to weigh in on it, because I know that how you deal with human services, how you deal with the police and so on, how you deal with mental illness is not solved. And I think you hear this tonight, but we all know it. Now, even before pandemic and the hotels, the same issues existed. So it's not like a new issue. Well, I would suggest that that be part of your discussion. I know that in Brooklyn, whether it was a good or bad idea, I don't know, but the, Precinct 73 just tried something, which has been written up in the papers, and Precinct 25 in Harlem, and there's one in the Bronx, is doing the same. So there's lots of examples out there of new ideas, but it would be good to have you, because you are the center of some of these mental illness issues, to be honest with you. We did just put out a police reform toolkit. Doesn't change the world, but what it does is it lists all the other studies that have taken place. We did one with young people in police in 2015, but there are many others. So I just say, Board 4, you're good at this kind of policy work, and this is something that needs to get done. In terms of the barricades, I know we had a discussion earlier. I've been pushing to try to at least not have them block the street. You know, I understand surrounding the building, but blocking the street is a challenge. Now, I did get calls the other day because Board 4, Board 5, and Board 7 all border Columbus Circle. I assume that that president is going to be gone, and maybe Trump Plaza or Trump Hotel will no longer be barricaded. But there still is the issue of the Columbus Circle. And I understand wanting to make sure the statue is not defaced in any way. But you might want to talk to the other boards, because it's hard to walk across Columbus Circle, not to mention the issues around the hotel. So this police is very challenging on many ways. I just want to bring that to your attention. I wanted to say the helicopters, it's not a new issue. Jesse Bodine and I worked together on it when I was in the city council. But there is an ongoing challenge with 311 calls dramatically increasing. So we put together with you and all the community boards a discussion task force meeting with Eastern Region Helicopter Council. The FAA showed up, Blade showed up, Uber Elevate showed up, obviously the Hudson River Park Trust, elected officials, and people who are concerned about this issue. And what was surprising and very helpful was a council member from Hoboken, because the issue is, no surprise to you, you know, we have issues with the downtown heliport and EDC not wanting to curtail the few, and there are a few, tourism. This is all about tourism. Helicopters that go out of downtown. I would appreciate that they not go out and they don't exist, but they do more or less fly over the river. They don't fly on Sunday, and they do follow Mayor de Blasio's criteria. However, what's happening is, and this is something that I wouldn't have known if the task force didn't exist, people are getting on a bus or driving to New Jersey, tons and tons and tons of people. And they are going up in the helicopter and they are taking a photograph for Instagram. And that is what they're doing. And that Instagram photograph is what's driving this helicopter hovering over Central Park, over parts of Manhattan, and making people very angry in terms of the noise. And of course, there are environmental issues also. So we are going to meet soon with those elected officials in New Jersey. And I want to thank Congressman Nadler, because he's been helpful in working on this forever. And so just so you know, we're trying. We also found out that NYC and Company, and I'm on the board, and I have great respect for Fred Dixon, but they do promote this discounted tickets on their website to go to New Jersey. And so we are working with them to see if they can either not do that or follow the protocol that has been set for the downtown heliport. That's just a very short version of that topic. I do want to say on 36th Street, I want to thank the community. I want to thank certainly Community Board 4. And I have to say, I want to thank Steve Banks, who's head of the agency that oversees homeless, because he did promise me and Lowell that he would do what he did. And I want to thank him, because we did not stop in terms of advocacy. I do think that we should all, however, continue to work on 36th Street. We don't have to have this discussion now, but there's a lot of work to be done, as somebody has said earlier. Regarding the tow pound, certainly the hot topic in the press, great news that they're going to be towing to, I believe, Queens and the Bronx. Just so you know, that's where the cars are going. So I don't have a car, but don't get your car towed, because you're going to have a long trail to find it. I'm not even clear how you're going to find it, to be honest with you. Supposedly there's going to be information. I would say don't even think about it. The issue, though, is we need a permanent site in the borough of Manhattan. That's what I keep saying over and over again, because it makes no sense either for the communities that have to experience the truck going through them. We also got a call from DC 37, because they represent the workers at this particular site. And at first the workers were told, oh, just pick one, Brooklyn, Queens, Bronx, whatever. But then after much push, they are now going to be meeting with the Office of Labor Relations and hopefully have a better assignment. But Manhattan has got to find a site. So we are pushing the police department. They are looking, but we absolutely have to do that. I just want to mention also that we've been working too, like everyone else, on the Skyline Hotel, and I think we should perhaps continue those great discussions you have with all the providers and see where the Skyline, I get a lot of complaints. I do want to thank, just like everybody else, Joe Resticio and everybody on the NYCHA Chelsea working group with the leaders. Let me tell you, I have all of Manhattan. I have a lot of NYCHAs. There's a lot of plans that pop up for infill, and we're going to have, you know, an MIH here. We're going to do that there. And then I look at the city and I look at lawyers, so we hire lawyers to sue the city so they don't do it. And we've been very successful. At this point, every time this comes up, all I do is say, listen, with a 2-year process or a year and a half, however long it's been, we are glad to discuss this with you. But I am not doing a ULURP, even though we have sued you that you have to do a ULURP, because that's not what NYCHA or the city like to do on NYCHA land. But the point is that the way in which this process, and it included not just those who were mentioned earlier, residents, electeds, but also to the credit of legal aid, to the city bringing them in, to the credit of Citizens Budget and others, CSS, who have a broader view and who have trust. Trust, trust, trust. That's what made a difference. So it's, yes, it's the amazing expertise, but these other organizations who I might not have said, and there were several of them, I just mentioned some, you know, if somebody from CSS says X, you're going to believe them as opposed to somebody from NYCHA. So it was a great process. It should be done everywhere. It takes time. Guess what? When you have time, you do it right, and then people feel that the process has worked. Hard to get the city to be understanding of that. We're very supportive of the arts. I'm glad that Save Our Stages, there's a lot of money running around right now, and we have to make sure that the groups know about it. Save Our Stages is obviously federal, but the Fund for the City of New York also has a lot of money now for arts groups. There's now obviously state money. You'll hear more about it for housing. There's federal money. There's different laws that are being enacted. And we've been working particularly uptown with Congressman Espiat. There's going to be a great deal of money, but it has to be access for small business. So all of this, again, we got to make sure it's sorted out. We put it on our newsletter. We make sure that it's in the social media, but we also have to get onto the ground to be sure that our mom and pops get, and our residents and the tenants get what they need. And there's also, we've been working, because we're very supportive, with Community Board, with SAPO, to try to do the necessary permits for the 9th Avenue Art Walk. Everything that brings artists to the fore is incredibly important. Who got hurt the most in this entire pandemic? We know it's essential workers, but it's still performing and live arts. They got killed. And so anything we can do to be supportive of them is incredibly important. I know we've been working with the Chelsea Block Association. We've been working with the Chelsea Hotel, and we've been working with a very challenging tenant on 136 West 17th Street. And I want to thank Brian Lewis from our office for doing that. So we're all working now on vaccine. We did a wonderful with Columbia University. We'll put it in the chat, you know, a couple of hours actually on really phenomenal, detailed answers to issues regarding vaccines, because people have a lot of questions, and we're doing something similar on Manhattan Neighborhood Network on Sunday. We'll put it all in the chat. And as you know, the Community Board applications are due February 1st. And also on our agency, on our website is information for February 21st for the applications for those who need funding, nonprofits in particular. Thank you very much.
Gail, do you have time for a couple questions?
Sure.
Colin Wright.
Hi, Gail. Thanks so much. You know, switching gears just a little bit to talk about the MTA. I know all the you and all the elected officials on the line, Dick and Linda and Corey, have been such strong supporters of the MTA over the years, and we've been really fortunate. Really want to thank Jerry Nadler, Chuck Schumer, you know, our federal elected representatives who did so much work to make sure that the MTA and transit agencies across the country will have a down payment to get them through the COVID-19 pandemic. Looks like the MTA might have enough money to, you know, to make it through 2021. And I think that that gives us as a community and as elected officials and as advocates a little bit of leverage right now to make some changes that I think will equitably benefit our neighborhoods. And two of those are, number one, I'd really like to draw your attention to the restoration of 24-hour subway service, which right now tens of thousands of essential workers, hospital workers, bodega workers, delivery, construction in Manhattan and across the city are really hurt by that policy. It seems, study after study shows that the MTA's cleaning regimen overnight is more for riders' psyche than for their health. And we'd really like to see, as advocates, the restoration of 24/7 subway service, and we think that the MTA can afford it.
Okay.
Also, the MTA is looking at fare hikes this month, and we want to make sure that given, the immense economic pain that people are suffering right now, that those fare hikes are equitable or canceled or delayed in some way. So those are my two comments on that. And thank you so much for the support that you've given the MTA over the past couple of years.
Thank you very much, Colin. I did, testified against the fare hikes, I have to tell you at this moment. And of course, congestion pricing I support it. It's controversial. Board 7 and Board 4 are going to get killed on this topic and others, but I am supportive. It's another location for funding. So I just also, one more thing, and then I'll stop, is that we want to thank the restaurants. We thank the Hell's Kitchen Takeout Challenge for Susie Darling, and Pocket Bar was the winner, but also the amazing work that went in to support the West Bank Cafe. It was really phenomenal. All in Board 4. Very exciting. Congratulations.
Joe?
Yeah, Gail, just wanted to ask you, could you join with Corey and the board? We need to convene a small task force to deal with this public safety issue, both on 36th and 9th and on 10th Ave around the Skyline, because we're now in the public safety mode. I'm just so concerned about people getting hurt now that it's not just the homeless issue, but it's just basic public safety. Yeah. And if you could help spearhead that, that would be really helpful with us.
I'd be glad to, Joe. I've learned a lot from the Lucerne too, about what works, to be honest.
Yeah. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Brad.
Thank you, Gail. I just want to look off into the future and bring up a topic of drones.
Yes,
and
I know about drones. Yes.
Making sure that, I know we're working on the helicopters. I've been talking about this for years, but I do not want Manhattan to be left behind in this new wave of technology. Yep. And I'm sure you're looking at it. I just wanted to look forward. Got a lot of serious topics, but I want to put this one out there. Thank you.
I'm with you, Brad, on that. We can talk.
All right, that's all.
I had one question. I'm sorry. Is it possible, Lowell?
Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you. I couldn't find the raise hand button. Borough President Brewer, speaking in the same vein as Brad, I was wondering if there's any to come out of the Borough President's office on making charging ports for electric vehicles accessible, not in parking lots in the Borough of Manhattan.
I have to pull myself, but I went to Israel many years ago and I was in the council and I came back and I said exactly that. And I had all these ideas because Israel is one big charging station. And I was told by the city of New York and the Bloomberg administration, it'll never happen here, Gail. You cannot have, forget it. So I was given a task force on this topic. I was so angry. And here we are in 2021 with exactly that. So we will do more, Chris, on this topic. I don't quite know. There's some discussion that goes on at DOT, but I'm glad you bugged me. I was so angry that the lack of foresight on this topic.
I had the privilege of recently driving the new Ford Mach-E, which is not a plug, but it's Ford's first crossover full electric vehicle. And it was very difficult to charge this vehicle on 5 kilowatt chargers. And I only see people jumping into the market, fully fledged with 35 to 40 kilowatt chargers, which are not necessarily available in Manhattan. They're available in Westchester and Long Island, but not in Manhattan. But I would love to, if possible, join you on any conversation related to the expansion of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm glad. I wish you had been there and we had been screaming at the Bloomberg administration 10 years ago. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you very much, Gail. Appreciate your time as always.
Thank you.
All right. Going up to Albany, we're going to start with Senator Brad Hoylman.
Hello. Hi, Lowell. Good to see everyone. Happy New Year. Yes, the Albany session started today. I think most of us, though, were gripped by the events in Washington as Senator Schumer just said on the floor of the United States Senate, that this is a day that will live in infamy. It's hard to believe what transpired over the last few hours, and the fact that domestic terrorists tried to upend our democracy. So I just want everyone to know that this is an issue. Of course, our congressman, I know, Congressman Adler, takes very seriously, but that we in Albany do as well. There was some rioting in Albany. 2 people were stabbed, and I think that the times and the volatility and the incendiary message from the current president have contributed to this. So please know that I'm going to do everything I can to continue to erase Donald Trump's legacy from New York City and New York State, including legislation that I carry, which may pale in comparison to what we really need to do with the current president, but to remove his name from a state park. And I'm going to continue to work on that effort. But closer to home, I just want to mention that Colin called for 24-hour, 7-day-a-week subway service to return. I carry legislation on that very topic. At the moment, it's hard to believe, but the MTA doesn't even have to take a vote to make non-24/7 subway service permanent. I want you to know that I'm going to be working on that as we reconvene in Albany. A week ago, we gathered to before the holiday to pass a special eviction and foreclosure prevention act. All it requires is a simple declaration of hardship, which we'll put in the chat, and makes it much more streamlined for tenants to not have to go to court to remain in their homes during this pandemic, which of course we know is only getting worse. We cannot evict anyone in the middle of a worldwide pandemic. And as was mentioned also, there's additional rent relief, which has taken far too long to get out the door, but we'll also put that in the chat for folks to apply. I wanted to give a couple of vaccine updates. We've been pressing the state to get more vaccines out the door. I know my colleagues at the city level have been doing that in the city of New York. I myself was on a vaccine trial at NYU Langone. I will tell you this, I definitely got the vaccine because I had some mild side effects, and I have the antibodies, which showed up in an antibody test that I took. So it definitely works. Good news ahead. We got to make sure that the most vulnerable get it, and they get it quickly. COVID testing needs to ramp up still. With that in mind, I'm having a pop-up site with my colleagues in government tomorrow here in the district at 327th 8th Avenue between 9 and 4:30 p.m. That's between 26th and 27th. You can just show up. I advise you to show up early. I want to give a special shout out to Maya Burlow from my team, who so many of you know. She's been doing an amazing job. Thank you for clapping for her. She organized this almost single-handedly, and we're happy. And I think the borough president's going to be there tomorrow, along with our Lieutenant Governor, Kathy Hochul, at around 10:30, if anybody wants to drop by and see them. The bill that I passed on collecting data regarding arrests, the demographic data, which is so important to understand as we continue to examine our policing and criminal justice system, went into effect. It's called the Police Statistics and Transparency Act. That's going to help us identify how low-level crimes are being adjudicated. And as the chair of the Judiciary Committee, I take that very Seriously, we've never had that information before. We've never had information at a statewide level who dies in police custody. The police departments actually had to Google that information. Our Division of Criminal Justice Services had to Google that information to understand that data rather than getting it from local police precincts. So we'll have that information and be able to direct new police reforms, continued understanding of how the reforms are working. That's very important to have data as it pertains to criminal justice. The governor signed a bill of mine before the holiday, which directs a study on predatory equity. It's the first time we've actually shown a spotlight of this really important issue. You know, there's a number of kind of serial offenders who have purchased buildings in different parts of our districts, and they're leveraged to the hilt, and they can't repay their mortgage. So what do? They try to push tenants out one way or the other. We call that predatory equity. A number of banks and financial institutions have lent to these slumlords. We need higher standards in connection with that, but we also need to stop it. So this study will hopefully be the first step in that regard. Again, to understand the problem before we can address it. In this legislative session, one of my focuses is going to be on traffic safety rather. I think folks know that in front of my office on 26th Street, a man, father of two, was killed by a truck cycling. There's now a permanent cycling lane there, protected, which is so important. But on some of our side streets, the city has not been able to lower the speed limit. We actually have a mandatory minimum speed limit in the city of New York of 25 miles per hour. I've introduced legislation to allow New York City to tailor streets to the appropriate speed limit, especially these days. It's so important given all the outdoor dining and the additional pedestrian and traffic use, as well as cyclists. So I hope to push that bill, as well as a bill that I want to bring universal speed cameras to the city of New York. It makes no sense that Albany controls not only our speed limits here in the city, but also the number of speed cameras. We need to expand that exponentially. My legislation will do that. And then finally wanted to talk about Pier 76. That is a big win, Lowell. And I want to thank you for your partnership in that regard. Lowell and I, we can tell the story now of the tale of the tape, which is Lowell and I up at, I don't know, in the middle of the night, it seemed, crafting language, working with my Senate leadership on insisting that the NYPD be off of Pier 76 by the beginning of this year. We've waited 20 years for the NYPD to move. We need the open space for our community, CB4 in particular, for the Hudson River Park. And I'm really glad to see that the city and specifically the NYPD is actually moving. So thank you, Lowell, for your partnership in that regard. And then just let me mention something about the issue of homelessness, which is a vexing problem and a growing one, of course. I want folks to know that last session, we passed a bill that I voted for that does not go into effect until January 10th of this year, but it requires that homeless shelters, when located in communities, have to go through a public review process before local community boards. I think that's a very important change. I think so many of the concerns that we've heard over shelter relocations in our city over the last several months were done without any notice to local elected officials or local community boards. And we're gonna open up the discussion and make certain that we all learn about it at the same time, and it doesn't happen without public input. I think that's a very important step. And I want to welcome the new deputy inspector to the precinct. I personally don't like this revolving door of inspectors, but I'm glad she's here. I hope she stays for a while. We have to revisit that issue of, once we get to know someone, they've moved on to another precinct, but I hope we can discuss that later. And thank you again for all your partnership over the last year. Thank you for inspiring us on a whole host of legislation. We'll continue to work on it. The biggest issue facing Albany as we fight our way through COVID and get the vaccine distributed is going to be how we bounce back from this, not just as a businesses and Broadway, but as a community. I have a number of bills on the topic, including Save Our Storefronts. You can go to saveourstorefronts.nyc. How I propose to help small businesses pay their rent through a shared sacrifice model of revenue sharing with the commercial landlord. It's something we piloted successfully at Grand Central in conjunction with the MTA, as well as getting these third-party apps that have been essentially parasites on restaurants to ensure that they actually have a written agreement before they take advantage of delivery services without the involvement of the restaurant. But I'm very concerned about theater and the arts and how we basically need a Detroit-style bailout for Broadway. Save Our Storefronts is an amazing first step. I'm so happy that once our government has reformed after this crisis today, we'll have a new Senate leadership that's going to help us with our mass transit, our public housing, and saving our arts community, small venues up to Broadway. It's the heart and soul of our district, and it's fundamental to what makes New York City a great place to live. So I look forward to your partnership on that as well, Lowell. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brett. We have a bunch of questions, a bunch of people with their hands raised. In the interests of time, I'm going to suggest that Maya, if you could post your email address and Brett's email address in the chat, and then I am going to ask, I'm going to give the floor to people that have questions.
Someone's mic is still on, playing the Vice President.
Chris, could you mute yourself, please? So I'm going to give the floor to people who haven't asked questions yet tonight. So I'm going to start with Sarah Appleton. And if anyone who I don't call on has a question, you can email Brad or Maya or both. So Sarah, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Lowell. Thanks, Senator, for being here. And thanks for your efforts in the past year pushing for the repeal of 50A. There's been some media coverage over the past couple months that many police departments around the state have still been resisting releasing disciplinary records, even when requested. Some have, I've seen reports that some have been citing a state loss. They're actually seeking reimbursement of costs for redacting and releasing records. Others have argued that, the law wasn't retroactive and so it doesn't apply to any records before the repeal. So I just wanted to ask if these incidents are on your radar and what your office is doing to make sure that the letter and spirit of the repeal is being complied with.
We're definitely tracking it in the Senate. It was such an important reform because we were one of the few municipalities in the country that shielded these types of abuses from the public. These are public officers, the police. I mean, we all love our local police forces and work very closely with them, but there is no reason why we shouldn't be able to know who the bad apples are, just like in any public officer's law context. So we will definitely follow that issue very closely. It was a major accomplishment that took decades to achieve, and I'm certain that we'll be tracking who and who is not complying. And if further legislation is necessary, boy, I'd love to help write it.
Okay, great. Thanks. Yeah, would just love to know your office is on it.
Yeah.
All right. James Wallace.
Hi, Senator Hoylman. Always a pleasure to have you join us. It was great talking to you the other day.
Yeah.
And thank you for joining us tonight. My question is regarding COVID-19. We lost in Community Board 4, John McCormack, who is a longtime executive director of INTAR, which is a great Latinx theater, independent theater. I had COVID-19. So, right now, the way we kind of address the issue is, people who've had it and passed away, people who caught it and fully recovered, and people who have yet to catch it and hopefully will get the vaccine. But there's a niche of people that I feel haven't really been talked about a lot, and that's the COVID long haulers. So I just want to make sure that your office was on top of making sure that New York State leads the way in not letting those people fall through the cracks. One of my good friends who used to live in New York is now living in another state. She was 35, otherwise healthy, had 3 kids, ran 2 businesses, very busy contributing member of society, caught COVID. By the way, she was pregnant with her 4th, caught COVID, was in an ICU for 2 weeks, barely survived. Now, months later, she can't lift her newborn. She has short-term memory loss, and she walks with a walker. Now, we can't do anything about the people we've lost, and we have a vaccine for the people who haven't caught it. But for the people who've caught it and will never maybe fully recover, I just want to make sure that that's on our radar and that we lead the way as a state in taking care of these people.
James, I really appreciate that. That's such an important point because the ranks of these long haulers seem to be growing, and we certainly need a health response that is sufficient. I have friends as well who are in the same category, some who haven't regained their sense of smell or their taste fully back and still have compression issues in their chest. It's going to require a lot of support. And it's going to be, I would imagine, and rightly so, a new category of disability that clearly is limiting people's involvement potentially in the future in the workplace and in other contexts. So they need to be protected and they need to have long-term financial and other types of assistance. So, I think we've got a number of models that we can look at, including 9/11. Clearly, this is going to be something bigger than the state of New York, I hope, but I hope we can get it ramped up quickly. And I totally agree with you in the importance of making sure that it's a priority as we head into the new session.
All right, thank you. Last question, Katie.
Thanks. Thank you, Senator. You provided some great information, and I really love what you said about your new legislation on the police statistics. I think that data is going to be so important. So that's great. But my question is actually about your new requirement that you said, I think is going into effect on January 10th, about this, that there are going to be public hearings now about the sightings of shelters, which is obviously so important. I was just wondering, will the new requirement apply to temporarily sited shelters, e.g., the hotels and things, like because of COVID?
It should. It should. That is my reading of the bill. We could get pushback from the city on that, but I think my reading is that it would. Now, whether there is a pandemic exception, we'd have to research. But my plain English reading of it suggests that it would.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Senator, for being here and your efforts on behalf of our community and your kind words. Thanks again for coming.
Thanks for having me.
All right, we're gonna keep moving. We're gonna try and keep moving here. Assembly Member Linda Rosenthal was with us earlier. I don't know if she's still here. She is. There she is.
Yes, I am here on this historic night. So I will not take up too much time because you've heard like lectures from elected officials and I will not give you one tonight. The day started off with great joy for many of us. And it ended in destructive attempted coup. So today, January 6th, seared in our minds. But it is also the day that I think we can look toward the future and a more sane and civil discourse in our nation's capital and around the country. I mean, it's people will ask you, where were you today? And so just remember where you were in a CB4 meeting, okay? Yes. Anyway, so a lot of what I wanted to say, others have said, so I'm not going to repeat it. The vaccine rollout has been botched. It's unconscionable. People need to get the vaccine quickly. Other states have managed to do it. City and state aren't coordinating properly. And I'm hopeful that they will repair that disconnect so that more people can get protection against this insidious virus. We did pass a moratorium on residential evictions in Albany. And May 1st is when foreclosure proceedings and residential evictions cannot happen. You know, this whole thing is building up to a gigantic mess because all the bills will come due. The rent bills will come due. The landlord's water bills, electricity bills, taxes bills, mortgage bills, everything's going to come due. And then what happens? That's why it's especially meaningful that we are going to have a change in administration on all levels in Washington so we can get some badly needed funding to save the MTA, to help NYCHA, all the ills of society that we've had to grapple with and that are just exacerbated during COVID. I have a meeting set up with Greg Russ, the chair of NYCHA, because there is legislation that the city is trying to advance to create a trust to raise billions of dollars to repair NYCHA. But the question is, how far does this go toward privatization? It's something we have to approach very carefully, and I'd love to hear your input and what you think about the plans going forward for NYCHA. Also, I was just appointed by Speaker Hasty to be chair of the Committee on Social Services. So after 5 years as chair of the Committee on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse, I'm moving on. This new committee has a broad portfolio, including domestic violence, SNAP, other public entitlements, supportive housing, and homelessness. So I expect I'll be very busy, and this is a statewide problem. And I look forward to hearing from all of you on your opinions, and I wish you all well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think everyone's worn out because I don't have any questions for you, Linda. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Staying in the assembly side of the building, Assembly Member Dick Gottfried, and I hope we're going to hear something about marijuana.
Hi there.
We could all use a hit right now, maybe, or?
I'm going to leave that to Dick.
Well, I hadn't planned on talking about that, but if you like, I can. I'm still trying to wrap my head around the fact that in 1982, in my 12th year in the Assembly, Corey Johnson was born. It's going to take me a while to get used to that idea. I mean, in 1982, I had ties that were old at that point that I still own. Anyway, not this one. This one's pretty new. Actually, as long as we're going into history, Senator Hoylman gave me this tie for my birthday one year. Anyway, the Capitol riots are certainly on everybody's mind tonight. I just have a couple of thoughts. Number one, if those folks were white, their blood would have been all over the ground. Number one. Number two, I've been saying this since Trump's campaign began. We know what color the hats are. We don't know yet what color the shirts are going to be, but it's coming. Pier, I was going to talk a little about Pier 76. I was the author of the 1998 Hudson River Park Act and saw to it that there was language in there about getting the tow pound off Pier 76. It ordered the city to use its best efforts to vacate the pier as quickly as possible. So here we are 22 years later. And, part of the problem is that although I and others in the community, elected officials, have been working all that time to try to get rid of the pier, no governor, no mayor that I've ever heard of is particularly interested in taking on the people in uniforms with guns, whether it's a president or a governor or a mayor. People don't like to take on the people with uniforms and guns, and that's who occupies Pier 76. We'll see how quickly the actual evacuation happens. Hopefully it's going to be quick. And I guess when Gail mentioned helicopters, that reminded me that there were two things specified in the 1998 law that had to be gotten rid of expeditiously. One was Pier 76, that maybe now is on its way out. The other is the heliport at 30th Street. So, after long last, we're making progress on one down, one to go. We'll see. Legislative session convened in Albany today. The speaker this afternoon announced new committee chair, well, all committee chairs. I'm pleased to announce that I have been reappointed chair of the Health Committee. In that capacity, I've been working on trying to push the city and state to move more quickly on COVID-19 vaccination. It's bizarre. The mayor and the governor have both known since March, 10 months ago, that at about this time, we were going to have the opportunity and the need to do a mass vaccination program. And yet, when we've had, yesterday we had the health commissioner speaking to the Assembly Democratic Conference, and his answers to a whole lot of questions were still, oh, yes, we're looking into that. Yes, we're working on that. Yeah, we're going to put that together. It's been 10 months since they knew they were going to need a vaccination program. And granted, the last time we did that was February of 1947 with smallpox. No, I was not in the legislature at the time. I hadn't been born yet for a few months, but there must be records of how we did it back then. And under state law, every county and the city of New York are obligated to maintain plans for dealing with communicable diseases, including vaccinations and including emergency response. I think just about every local government in the state has a plan in a file drawer on that topic. The state has, as far as I can tell, not looked at any of those plans or offered to work with any of our local governments. How many people are going to die unnecessarily because the COVID-19 vaccine is slow getting out the door? We're not going to know for a while, but there will be such people, and it's inexcusable. Yesterday, there was a terrific article in the New York Times about medical debt. It focused a lot on the Northwell health system, whose CEO makes about $10 million a year, having brought lawsuits about medical debt against 2,500 patients since the epidemic began. Senator Gustavo Rivera of the Bronx, who is the Senate chair of the Health Committee, and I have both been sponsoring a bill dealing with medical debt. We're going to be reintroducing that bill shortly, and we're going to be working on strengthening it even more. Last thing I want to mention in my capacity as chair of the Health Committee, so many of the problems that we are confronting with COVID, whether it's the long haulers or people who can't get care at all or don't go for care because they think they can't afford it. You know, I've been saying for years that almost every problem we face in healthcare, as patients, as employers, as healthcare providers, as taxpayers, is made worse by the way we pay for healthcare in this country. And so I am continuing to fight for the New York Health Act, my single payer bill, that would really wipe out a whole lot of these problems, including the question of medical debt. Last thing I want to mention before I take questions, the hotel issue in Hell's Kitchen. I joined with Board 4 in the letter that it sent to the city, I guess it's months ago now. Very good position statement by Board 4. I'm glad we're moving at least one of the hotels out of 36th Street. It's a good start. We've got a lot more to do, and I look forward to working with Board 4 on it. That's all I have to say. As opening remarks, I'd be happy to take questions. Anyone can stand.
I teased the marijuana thing earlier, so do you want to share with everyone?
Yeah, sure. An issue I've been involved in with for a while on a legislative basis. Yes, I've inhaled a few times, but not in a long time. Although since Corey was born. So in 1972, another West Side Assemblyman at the time, Franz Leichter, later became our state senator, put in the first bill in New York to legalize and regulate and tax adult use of marijuana. I was a co-sponsor of that bill. And in 1977, I sponsored what became New York's decriminalization law that reduced the penalties for possession of small amounts in 77. And in 2014, I was the sponsor of the medical marijuana law. And for several years now, I've been working with Liz, I'm blanking on her last name, our senator. How can I?
Kruger.
Kruger, yes, Liz Kruger. I was going to say Holtzman, but that was a different senator. Kruger, with Liz Kruger on the bill to allow adult use. I've been working with the Cuomo administration on the language for their proposal, which they've put forth for a couple of years now. The governor announced today he is going to be reintroducing that as he'll be announcing that in the State of the State message in a few days, which not only deals with adult use, but also strengthens and broadens our medical marijuana program. Very important legislation. I mean, our drug laws are horribly outmoded, horribly racist, utterly broken, and getting marijuana, at least as far as adult use, out of the criminal justice system is really important. And I'm hoping that this year we can make that happen.
All right, JD had a question.
I just have a comment. Dick, it's JD. I'm just a citizen. I have enormous admiration and respect for you. But God damn it, you're the head of the health committee. And you're sitting here telling us, blaming other people for this unconscionable lack of rolling out the vaccine. Please go kick some ass. Do something. Do something. People are going to die. There is no excuse for this. In 1947, the state vaccinated 7 million people in a month for smallpox. What the hell is going on? I say that with great love for you, Dick, but a lot of us are furious at this.
I am too. And anyone who isn't furious at it isn't paying attention. And part of the problem is we live in a state which has, under a state constitution, a very strong executive branch. The legislative branch in Albany is not what you read about in the Federalist Papers. I wish it was, but I don't get to tell the governor what to do. I don't get to tell the mayor what to do. And Google in the New York Times how many times you saw a mention of me in the last, pick any number of years, taking a position on a health issue. You won't find any reference to me. You won't find any reference to almost any other state legislator. Why? Because they consider us utterly irrelevant. So we put out statements, we write letters, we do all the things that you want me to do. I do have to say, I've never kicked anyone in the ass. Maybe I should try that. I think there's something in the penal law about that. But when a tree falls in the forest and nobody hears, does it make a sound? It is very frustrating and makes me a whole lot angrier, probably even than you are. And you're absolutely right. People are going to die. And, if we were a Canadian province and instead of chairing the health committee, I was the Minister of Health. Hello. I'm not sure that would be such a good idea, having me run anything, but we're not a Canadian province. I am not the Minister of Health. And the state health department doesn't pay a whole lot of attention to what I say or the Senate health chair or anybody else who doesn't work for Andrew Cuomo. And by the way, I've served with 8 governors.
How are you, my dear?
And they all use the same training manual.
Thanks, Dick. Keep up the good fight.
Thank you. I will do my best.
Thank you, Dick, for joining us tonight. Appreciate your time, appreciate you being here. We have one more elected office to hear from. Philip Ellison, who I mistakenly identified earlier, is here representing Public Advocate Jimani Williams. Philip, I know you posted a lot of notes in the chat. Is there anything you wanted to highlight for us? You're on mute, sir.
Thank you. I'll be brief. Hello, everyone. Some of my friends on Community Board 4. I'm good to be here. If you bear with me. Well, I haven't always had a chance to be always in this meeting in the last bit. I am the only, unlike my peers in the Public Advocate's Office, there is no liaison given the budget crisis that we're in. So all of Manhattan is where I'm overlooking and trying to work with communities. So I'm very thankful, I would say, for Paul Devlin, even Marissa Rodanti, and a number of Brad Hoyman's office for sharing information around homelessness and 36th Street, paying attention, elevating things there. Just a really big update. There are a number of things that we've been working on, whether that's the recommendations that we set out before the mayor made changes to how we're dealing with schools right now, and so forth. But the biggest thing, and I think I'm always excited about this, and it's great news, is just around the watch list, the landlord's watch list. We released that before the holiday. And that is really a coming together of data. When we look at big data, we look at technology, and we look at advocacy around landlords that have the violations and have really been abusive to their tenants. And so that information's there. We also made the change that we're going to be keeping an eye and updating the worst landlords list. And I say that this technology and data, when we put this together, we make it really actionable. That's why I'm always so excited. So, when we've released this list, when I first got to this office last year, the public advocate went on and took certain residents on television. NYCHA was fixing it the day afterwards. And so, if you get a chance, please take a look at the website. It's actually a really robust, dynamic effort, and it continues to evolve. So I won't be long. I just wanted to say that despite today, what we watched in DC, I, and I'm sure my office appreciate the sentiments that were just shared by the Assemblyman Dick Gottfried around what took place in DC and the discrepancies. And we're looking at a number of things. So please reach out. My information's there. And also reach out to Jesse about the Public Safety Committee. It would be great to be involved in the Public Safety Committee. So I'm just to make sure I'm touching base and having information to share with our office. So you all have a blessed night, and congrats or good luck on the progress that you've been making and so forth. Thank you.
Well, thank you for being here. We appreciate your being here and hanging in, considering you're covering an entire borough. Okay, moving on. The next speaker we will hear from, I promise will be short because he wants to go home too, our beloved district manager, Jesse Bodine.
Hey everybody, I'll be really quick. So for January committee updates and board reminders, so the Chelsea Land Use Committee will be meeting on Wednesday, January 13th, rather than its normal day because of the holiday. Just a reminder that the CB4 Social and Racial Justice Task Force meets on the third Tuesday of the month at 6:30. And you can register for that on our website as well. All the other committees meet at their regular time. That's all I'm going to say tonight.
Okay, thank you, Jesse, and thank you for all you do. I don't know if you guys realize it, and because I didn't realize it until I sat in this chair. You cannot do the job without a brilliant district manager, and we are very lucky to have one. My report, small meetings and events, most of it you've heard already, so I'm just going to run down the list quickly. The Housing, Health, and Human Services Committee met with the owners of the Jeanne d'Arc residence on West 24th Street. Christine Allen and I attended Gail's helicopter task force meeting. I don't know if Gail is still here, but I pushed her at the very end of that meeting to include getting rid of the heliport in Hudson River Park as one of the things we can accomplish. Big shout out to Maria Ortiz, who ran a coat drive in December on behalf of the board. And I know some other CB4 members helped out with that. There is the ongoing CB4 meeting with DHS that Maria and Jesse attend. There was the NYCHA working group, which you've heard all about, but we held a forum back in December well, let me back up. The working group held 5 meetings with NYCHA residents in Fulton and Chelsea Elliott to let the residents hear about the plan. We co-hosted a meeting to let the rest of the public hear about the plan. We've had over 180 views of that meeting, both live and on tape. Kudos to Joe, to Betty, to Mike, to Hector, and for putting that all together. And thanks to Maria again for helping me out with the questions that night. I, as you've heard multiple times, spent most of December working on 36th Street and Pier 76. And that's the end of my report. So let's move into the business session and the Business Licensing and Permits Committee, Frank and Bert. There are 7 letters. 1 is solely for ratification.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Unfortunately, we're going to have a little discussion about item 6. But before we get to that, I'd like to ask if there are any questions or issues about items 1 to 5 or 7.
Can I, Frank, can I just jump in real quickly?
Sure.
I just want to make sure, because I know there was a difficulty at the beginning of the meeting for the vote sheet. I believe I resolved the issue. So if there is still an issue, just please put it in the chat and I can resend it again. But I resent it in the email and then I put it into the chat. So I think everybody should have access to it.
Yeah, Jesse, I was able to open mine from your email without any problems. So any questions or issues about items 1 through 5 or 7?
There do not appear to be, Frank.
Okay, so item 6, and I apologize for raising what is going to seem like minutia at this hour, has to do with the scope of their sidewalk cafe. I want to say at the start, this has nothing to do with outdoor seating, the open restaurants program during COVID. This only has to do with the formal sidewalk cafes whenever they get back into action, which could be several years away. We asked the applicant to defer this issue until it was more relevant, but they've refused. And what happened at BLP was we had a long discussion about our standing policy of wanting 8 feet pedestrian clearance from sidewalk obstructions, including trees. We all assumed there was an 8-foot clearance at the meeting, and the BLP voted to recommend approval based on that assumption. We then got the actual measurements from the applicant, and it turns out there isn't 6-foot clearance. And I'm going to turn it over to Sidewalk Cafe expert Christine to discuss what the options are here.
Yes, thank you. So this applicant is asking for 50 tables inside, and that's not an issue, but also 50 tables outside. And he also indicated that he will be interested in using the parking lane to put probably another 50 tables. There are 2 trees with pavers, but no grating on the sidewalk. And after research and going back to the regulation, the rules of the City of New York, in order to comply, the measurement would have to be taken from the tree pit. And as it is, it would be 6 feet. If we were going to measure from the tree, it would be 7.5 feet. So as a major concession, in order to comply, the applicant would have to remove 13 tables, a full row of tables. And as a major concession, we proposed that he removed only 4 tables to accommodate the path. The applicant, the operator, has not wanted to remove more than 2 tables, which would not be compliant because it would create a recess. So our proposal is now to deny the approval of the sidewalk cafe with DCA and the liquor license for the sidewalk cafe.
Any questions? Okay.
And I just want to stress what I said at the start. This would not affect this applicant's ability to have outdoor seating during the COVID state of emergency. This would only take effect once that is over and we are back to the traditional sidewalk cafe rules and regulations.
Katie?
Yeah, I don't know if it's just a glitch, but I cannot now open that letter in the Dropbox. It's saying it's a PDF issue. Is it available to everybody else and it's just a problem on my end?
I had to download it instead of just trying to open it.
Okay, I'll try that. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? Marty, are you raising your hand?
Yes.
Go ahead, sir.
Does voting yes on this include what Christine just said?
It would be yes as amended, right? My proposal is an amendment to the letter, which is in the folder.
And everybody's
friendly amendment.
So just checking the yes box means that it's yes as amended.
Yes.
Yes as amended, which is for a denial.
Right. A denial of the sidewalk cafe.
Of the sidewalk cafe.
Sidewalk cafe piece. Who's got a hand up? Hector.
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm something since it is in my neck of the woods down here. That cafe is not built yet. I mean, obviously it's not completed, right? Because that's a part of the whole lantern project.
Yes.
Okay, so So this is just getting everything in place for when it is open.
Right.
What is the projected time for that, for the opening? I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
They said that the first apartments in the building would be moving in March. So, you know, by the time they do all the, I don't think it would happen much more before June at the earliest.
Oh, okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Twee, did you want to ask a question about item 6? Is that what your chat note says? I thought sidewalk cafe tables were to be reduced, so why does it say 52? We're under Christine's amendment, we are denying the entire application for sidewalk cafe.
Yeah.
I hope that answers your question. I know you're having technical issues tonight. All right. Frank, anything else you want to add? Because I don't see any other questions.
No, that's everything. Thank you for your patience.
Okay. Moving on. Item number 8 is Clinton Hell's Kitchen Land Use Committee, JD.
Yes, thank you, Lowell. This is a preview of an application by the Clinton Housing Development Company to the New York State Historic Preservation Division to designate what was called Patty's Market on 9th Avenue between 35th and 40th Street as a historic district. CHDC, the Clinton Housing Development Company, came before the board, before the Land Use Committee to request support for the proposed application, which we gave. And we also, I think, attached, we have also applied to the city Landmark Preservation Commission for designation of Patty's Market, which was a push cart market on 9th Avenue in the upper 30s for, I don't know, 50, 60 years. And we feel the applicant feels should be, and the board feels should be designated as a historic district to celebrate those immigrants who fed Hell's Kitchen for so many years. And so that's what the letter is about.
Any questions? Betty? Betty, you're on mute.
I read the report by the consultant, which was fascinating, and I didn't know all that history, which was wonderful. And the issue of LPC, it seems like they have this is more general than just this letter, so little accountability to responding to asks for historic designation. Is there something that could be more snarky or something in the letter about LPC not responding?
The Land Use Committee is never snarky. That's not in our mandate. I don't know if that would be possible, Betty. But we could certainly add something to, I was hoping to ask Corey because I know Corey's in support of this, but we could certainly try to add something to entice some response from LPC. That's a good suggestion. I just want to add, I'm sorry.
I thought you were done. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to add one thing. Joseph Restuccia is a member of the Land Use Committee. He did not bring the application before us, but the Clinton Housing Development Company, which he presides over, did. So Joe, and we need to list this in the letter in a footnote, is present but not eligible. He did not vote on this, and he is not eligible to vote tonight.
And Joe, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I did want to note my conflict. I was about to do that. Thank you, JD. Okay. But also, I just wanted to note in general that in the summer on the LPC side of this is not to the state side, that Corey did ask the board on how we could proceed on getting the district designated. And I think we should be following up on that, Lowell. in the coming months.
I raised this at I'm pretty sure I raised this at a borough board meeting with Gail's office. Brian, if you're still with us, I think I asked for a little nudge at LPC.
Yes,
I will follow up. Brian, yeah?
I believe so, yeah. I will follow up with the minutes from whenever that meeting was.
But this is one of those garment center rezoning commitments, so we should be asking Gail and Corey to get another meeting with us in LPC about it.
Yeah, I pushed Gail's office to push LPC for us. So I think I took care of the snark already.
Thank you, Lowell. I mean, this is a way of honoring all immigrants in Hell's Kitchen in Chelsea.
All right, are there any other questions about letter?
Thank you for coming.
James Wallace, go ahead.
Hey, first, great letter, and I'm fully in support of the letter overall. There was a conversation during the committee meeting, and I draw your attention to lines 102 to 105. It says, the board is mindful that the term patty has been considered a slur on persons of Irish ethnicity for some. However, the board also notes that members of the Hell's Kitchen community of Irish descent, including members of the board who attended the land use committee meeting, noted they had no objection to the historic Paddy's Market. So 2 things. Number 1, there was one person that I recall who was a member of the public who commented and made a joke and that they were Irish and that they didn't have a problem with it, and Irish people have a good sense of humor. And then there was one person on the committee who also said they were Irish and therefore it's not a problem. I'm not here to say we should change the name. I also don't think we should be imposing our perception of the word as influential in this decision. What I thought we came out of the committee saying was that CHDC should consider addressing the question with Irish organizations. And that's not in the letter. So I'm just wondering if that was inadvertently left out or not taken as a friendly amendment, because my understanding when we left the committee meeting was that that's the way it would be phrased.
James, I apologize if that was left out. I was just trying to be accurate about what I perceived was raised at the meeting, just to note some people said this and blah, 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 but I'm happy to put in something about if you want, the committee will look into.
Well, if I may, I think it's very simple. It's just that we encourage. It's not even a requirement. I'm just saying, why don't we just encourage that CHDC approach Irish community groups about the appropriateness of the name and whether or not another name could be considered. So it's not even that forceful. It's just having the conversation, because there's no indication that that conversation took place. Now, if that conversation took place, mazel tov, fantastic. I have no objection. But I'm just saying, like, can that conversation take place, or at least should there be some indication that the conversation took place?
James, I'm happy to put that in, but frankly, we did not invent the name. It's the historic name. It's been used by the board before. I'm happy to put something in the letter along those lines it's really not for us, as you pointed out, but I'm certainly happy to put something in there to say if there's further concern, we're happy to, I don't know, some language like that. Would that help?
I appreciate it. And again, just to be clear, I understand that was what it was called. But, people referred to Black people as Negroes. It was perfectly fine at the time. It's not considered really offensive, but I certainly wouldn't want to be referred to as a Negro today. It's not offensive. It's not considered a slur, but it's out of time. And so, the way we characterize it, it should be discussed amongst people for whom it might be important. That's the only point.
Yeah, you raise an excellent point. I guess my feeling is we can only present what we have been told what the historic name was, what the board has presented before, and that's up to the state and the city to wrestle with that. You make an excellent point, and let's try to find some language to answer what you're suggesting.
Thanks. I'll send some.
That help.
All right. So you're taking that as an amendment, correct?
I'm taking as a friendly amendment that we will try to work out something to answer James' concern.
Understood. Marty?
Sure.
I want to speak to those folks who saw the 116-page document and said, no way I can read this damn thing, and echo what Betty said. It is an excellent piece of historical writing, and I recommend it to whoever wants to learn about our neighborhood. It's a worthy read, and it should be probably prominently posted as part of our website.
Thank you. Thank you. If I could just say thanks to Lowell and thanks to Jesse for finding the funding so we could get this study done. And I am of Irish descent, partially. That's a failing, I realize that, but I really look at this as a celebration of not only the Irish, but all the immigrants that really made Hell's Kitchen and Chelsea what it is today, a beacon for the world. And so I look at it as a celebration. And if that word patty is offensive to some, not to all, but to some, then I think we should take back the word and make it a term of pride. Thank you for those comments.
Thank you, JD. Moving on, Chelsea land use, 3 letters, 2 are solely for ratification, and 1 is the subject of our public hearing many hours ago. Paul, Betty?
Paul's going to do the Flatiron one. I'm going to do the Starrett-Lehigh, and he's going to do the zoning for flood resilience.
So the Flatiron bid has proposed an extension coming into Community Board 4. There's just a few portions of a block along the west side of 6th Avenue. Most of the district is in Community Board 5. This letter reiterates our previous support for the expansion of the bid. There's been no changes since the original presentation from many months ago. So this is really just an echo of our support.
Okay, any questions about this? All right, Betty, next 2 are yours.
Next one, okay. Starrett-Lehigh Terminal Warehouse. Comments on the draft scope for the targeted DEIS. If you were wondering what a targeted DEIS is, it's that in the EAS stage, a number of topics were screened out. So not every topic will be examined in the DEIS, just certain topics. So in case you don't hear this very often, a targeted DEIS. Anyway, this is for a 2-block area between 26th and 28th, between 11th and 12th. You know these buildings, you've probably seen them 100 times. And the proposal is to create a new sub area to the special West Chelsea district, expanding the district, rezoning from M23 to M24. So there's a broader range of uses permitted. No hotels, no residential units or facilities with sleeping accommodations. And there are some restrictions. Floor area is not permitted to exceed 15% of total floor area of each building. That's for destination department stores. Our job here in this letter is to comment on the draft scope. So this isn't necessarily commenting on the entire proposal, although we have asked, one of our major asks here is that there be an alternative which reduces the restriction to 10% from 15% of the floor area. So there's fewer destination retail uses permitted. We don't want it to be like a mall atmosphere. We feel this is a very special place. We don't want to see Walmart there or Target or those kinds of, a lot of those stores. And we talked about more robust analyses for visitors, bike riding and pedestrians, and improved pedestrian safety on West 26th Street, and a design suggestion recommendation for the terminal warehouse building to bring back historic towers on the eastern facade. So this isn't going to be like we approve or disapprove. These are comments. So I tried to give you a summary, and I know, are there any questions?
Joe.
Quick clarification, Betty. I know that's gone out and it's a ratification, but could we do a follow-up?
No, this isn't ratification.
Yeah, this is not a ratification.
Oh, I'm sorry.
This isn't the flood one.
Oh, sorry. So this is the issue where the owners say that they can't do the towers because it will violate the zoning envelope. So that really needs to be changed. That's their claim. The towers and the crenellation and everything is not affected by the zoning envelope. That's a building code issue. And to my knowledge, for landmark buildings, you can extend beyond the 18 inches from the facade. So they gave you a line of bullshit. It has nothing to do with...
But we're saying we're not accepting that.
Right, but it has nothing to do with zoning whatsoever.
Okay, well, I guess we could strike that out if it makes it confusing.
No, I'm saying they can say they made that claim, but in fact, that regulation does not live in zoning. It's in the buildings department, and you can do it on a landmark building. So
and also, it's not really a floor area issue because this is a special district and they're over compliance anyway. So there are many levels of why you have to say no.
I just think that you can achieve this as a condition of approving this extension of the district. That they will have to agree to it.
Maybe I confused it by putting that background in it.
Right.
I also, in terms of background, just want to point out that Community Board 4 recommended way back when that these two blocks should be rezoned to the zoning district that is identified here for the proposal. So not the details of what's allowed and what's not allowed, but we can feel good about this extension to the special district because we had already recommended that, and city planning just decided not to act on that recommendation. So you can feel comfortable with this.
Paul?
Well, I'm a little bit confused because Joe, that the parapets that we're talking about in this letter, terminal warehouse went before landmarks to try to get, and we asked to get those parapets added, and we were told the zoning wouldn't allow it. So the reason we're raising it now is because if they say the zoning won't allow it, and we're having a zoning text amendment proposal, we can insert that language into the new zoning to allow those parapets to be put up.
Right. The parapets are not governed by zoning whatsoever. They gave you a line of bullshit. And as part of any change they want for zoning, you can require a condition of our approval that they restore the parapets as a part of a general city council negotiation. This is a matter of money, nothing else, Paul.
No, I think the reason this is in that letter is because if there was a line of bullshit, as you're saying, from previous times. This is something we reinserted because we're not comfortable with their answer to us in the past, and we're trying to raise the topic again so that we can get it inserted.
You need to debunk. No, but you cannot insert parapets into zoning. That's not where it goes. So Understood. You should not create an impression that a text amendment allows the parapet. Getting this text amendment and putting a condition on it, if and only if they restore the parapets, you will get the parapets. This is not the pathway. We should talk maybe offline on how to get to where you want to go.
All right. Yeah, I'd appreciate that because
We can work with you on exactly saying it correctly.
Yeah.
You know, is there any harm in leaving it in? And just to play devil's advocate, you know, a parapet
yes,
is
because
required.
it's not accurate, David.
Well, a parapet is required by the building code. To that extent, it's a code issue.
It's not a zoning matter. Doesn't live in the zoning resolution.
Right, but would zoning allow a parapet that was 100 feet tall around the perimeter of a building?
Yes, there is. M24 has no height limits.
You know, my recollection is that when this came up before, Lee Compton felt that this was something that an appeal could be made on the basis of the building being a landmark for an exception to the current zoning.
I want to interrupt you for 1 second. Don't forget, folks, we're talking about the scope of the draft EAS, right? So this is not about the zoning text amendment itself. This gives us the opportunity to have a historic resource, which is a qualification for a scope review. The historic resource is the parapets. So we want to include the parapets as part of the scoping process. And I think Joe and David, and Betty, we should have another conversation about how to address it in terms of when the zoning text amendment comes up for vote itself. But right now, the parapets are a historic resource, which have not been recognized. And the scoping will allow us to raise the issue as an important component of our community. And we can,
I'm just saying, don't raise it as a zoning, raise it as an historic resource issue.
Yeah, we'll work on that.
Okay.
Okay, so just for everyone else, what are we actually voting on tonight? Can someone please clarify as to the parapet issue and what we're voting on tonight?
Well, in general, what we're voting on are comments on the draft scope for the targeted DEIS. And
Understood, Betty, but where do the parapets fit into that? It's what we're voting on.
Well, there's there is a topic in the draft DEIS that is called historical and cultural resources. There's a topic area, okay? So it fits, we feel it fits into that topic area.
Okay.
And we want to be sure that the final scope deals with this issue, and I think if it's that we have to just reword it, tweak it, that it's not a zoning issue, it's more of a DOB issue, but we want to get it in there, because if you don't get it in there, then it's kind of off the table.
So what we're doing is we're making sure that this is raised in the final EIS.
Yes.
Okay. Joe, did you want to piggyback on that?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that we can do a tweak tomorrow on the language to make sure it's included in a way that gets us the path to noting it's going to happen.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
All right. Item 11. This one's just for ratification. Paul, am I coming back to you?
You are. This is the citywide zoning text amendment on coastal flood resiliency programs. With many meetings on this, the deadline for submissions was on the 28th, so we had to get the letter in. So this is simply for ratification, but it did come to Chelsea Land Use twice. We had discussions at Clinton Hell's Kitchen Land Use. We had meetings with the Borough President's Office. We had meetings with community board chairs from other districts. So we've had a lot of input onto this. Our three main focus areas for our district is the protection of the historic district components, the protection of the special district components to make sure that the special districts that are adjacent to historic districts don't get overbuilt and create shadows on the High Line specifically. And then to make sure that any new developments don't abuse these new flood resiliency programs to add height and bulk to new buildings, notably in the western rail yards of Hudson Yards. And the final component that we added in was on NYCHA housing. There, the floodplain doesn't hit the entire campus of Elliott Chelsea North Fulton, but there are some buildings that are within there. So we're requesting that for NYCHA campuses or developments, that the flood resiliency program applies to all buildings for consistency reasons, rather than just those buildings that are within the floodplain. Joe raised some concerns about how this is going to impact what the NYCHA working group has been magically struggling through, is a magical word for that. So we're going to tweak a little bit of that just to make sure that the goals of NYCHA working group can be attained without disrupting the flood resiliency position we're taking across the city. Any questions? Joe has a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to note for the board that our letter came out a couple of days after, because of the time constraints, after the Chelsea NYCHA plan went to the full working group, and we had not been aware that there would be an impact by the zoning. So today I organized a meeting with City Council Land Use with Raju Mann and Andrew Lassiter and James Cotton, who does the flood stuff, and myself to test through site by site how it would affect the plan. And we're almost done. I sent some of the stuff to Betty and Paul. So I want to make sure whatever language we put in, because it's going to go to city planning, is very strategic so it doesn't undercut some of the things we figured out in the plan. And that we'll figure that out like tomorrow or something to get it to happen.
Right. And Joe, because this is letter we're voting on tonight is for ratification, you're going to do that as a supplement, correct?
It's got to be a supplement to our letter. I want to make sure it goes in the city planning record. So when other stuff comes up, we never have NYCHA saying, oh, we just can make a building 200 feet higher because of resilience, you know, kind of bullshit.
And Joe, I think, as I've said to you, and just for the rest of the board to hear as well, I think most of these issues are not going to have negative impact on NYCHA. The height issues and whatnot, the wet floodproofing, dry floodproofing, all of that. The notes that you sent me today, I read through, and I don't see a conflict yet. So let's.
There's a lot. I have a lot more detail, Paul. I haven't been able to send yet because I just got it together today. And Council Land Use owes me one thing back. They haven't told me about daycare yet. That directly affects Hudson Guild. So like, this is a really complex thing. So I want to make sure we don't trip over ourselves. That's all.
Yep, understood. I'm happy to work with you on it.
What was the last thing you said you didn't get?
The Council Land Use hasn't told me if daycare as a community facility is wet flood proofed or dry flood proof, depending upon where it is. So that's a major thing because of the guild relocation.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions?
I'm happy to go to any of those meetings with you if you want to.
All right. Any other questions on any of the Chelsea land use items? All right. Moving on. ACEs, item number 12. Kit.
Thanks, Lowell. I'll be real quick. Just want to thank Katie for doing a really thorough job of digging into this issue and taking a really collaborative approach to writing this letter. She's going to talk us through it.
Great. Thanks, Kit. This letter is basically requesting a meeting with a variety of city agencies. So the mayor's office, Stringer's office, Gail's office, the DOE, the SDA. And basically what we're trying to do is to address an issue that was raised to ACEs by a high school that is in a leased building. And what they pointed out to us is that if a school is in a leased building and it has any capital improvement needs, that they are not allowed to make any capital improvements for the last 6 years of their lease because of an unfortunate confluence of events. So basically, the city charter says that any money that's used for capital improvements can only be used if the capital improvement has a lifespan of at least 5 years. And the SCA says that if a capital improvement is done to a school in a leased building, that it doesn't have a guaranteed lifespan of 5 years if the lease is up in 5 years. So basically the SDA's rule is that, that if a lease is expiring in 6 years or less, then there can be no capital improvements at that school. What makes it particularly tricky is that it's very hard and there's no database available right now to schools or community boards or the Manhattan Borough President's Office. There's no database available that says when leases expire. So basically, schools in leased buildings are at a real disadvantage compared to schools that are in city-owned buildings because their hands are tied to make any capital improvements in the last 6 years. And the SCA also has a rule that they will not enter into negotiations to renew a lease until less than 2 years before the lease expires. So this high school that came and spoke to us in a really great presentation they gave us, their lease is due to expire in a little more than 2 years. They got city funding 4 years ago or 5 years ago to do these really important capital improvements. But because of the way the funding worked, by the time the funding would have been available, the SCA said, sorry, your lease is expiring in a little under 6 years, so you can't have those improvements. So their roof is leaking, they're having all sorts of issues. So this letter is really trying to say, hey, we need to have all of the players at the table, and we need to try and figure out not only how we can help this specific school get these important capital improvements done, for which they already have approved funding, but we also need to figure out how we can address this issue so that schools and leased buildings are not stuck for 6 years at a time without getting their needed capital improvements. Did that make sense?
Katie, I have a question about this.
Sure.
If there's an SCA rule and we're trying to get everyone at the table to discuss this and convince them that their rule is stupid, why are we sending a letter to SCA? Wouldn't we be better off addressing it to Gail to try and let her rally the troops and force everyone to come to the table?
Well, we are addressing this letter to Gail and to others. It's
all right. Okay.
Did I misunderstand your question?
No, I thought it was just going to SCA.
Oh gosh, no. It's going to everybody. We're basically trying to say we need everybody at the table. It can't be the SCA saying, sorry, our hands are tied. And then,
I misunderstood then.
Okay.
Joe, you had a question, or comment?
Yeah, the SCA rule about the not renewing till the last 2 years, that's an SCA rule. But the issue, Katie, about spending money for not more than 5 years, that's not an SCA rule.
Correct.
That's a capital bonding issue.
Right.
And we're never going to be able to get that waived.
Well,
ever. I mean, I deal with capital money all the time, all kinds of agencies. That flows from the bond requirement.
I got it waived on Directive 10. I most definitely did. For the devices that kids have to buy, I'm listening carefully. For devices that kids have to buy, it used to be Directive 10 is gone. So it's, what's your word? Bullshit? Is that the word you used earlier?
Yeah. Have you got it waived for actual bricks and mortar building? Gail?
No, but I got it. But this is not that different, because what happens is it's waived. No longer do you need a shelf life of 10 years, and no longer do you have to have it be available, whatever the other criteria was. I think this needs to be fought.
Isn't this a Scott issue then?
Yes, there's definitely a bonding issue. You have to go with OMB and the controller's office. Those are the
right,
two.
Scott. I'm saying it's got to be Scott to help on this one, right?
And OMB, yeah.
And we've included him on the letter too.
Got it, okay.
But it is possible to fight. It took me 10 years, but I won.
10 years is no time, Gail.
It's just part of your term on the board, Joe. Josephine has her hand up.
I just want to make sure, thank you so much for the great letter, Katie. I know that was not easy to do, lots of information to go through there. I just wanted to make sure that the superintendent is copied on the letter, or the letter goes to her as well. There's the Manhattan superintendent for high schools.
Yep.
And there's also the executive superintendent. So
yeah, Marisol. Yeah, that was our intent, and I haven't double checked to make sure everybody was copied, but I'll certainly make sure that they are.
Thank you.
Yeah, I to go back to what I said, I would copy. I mean, in addition to everyone who's on it, I would copy Corey. I would, copy. I mean, you got the basic people, but I want to send this everywhere. Was really my point.
Yeah, and actually, a little. I guess I would also just make the point, which maybe we made earlier, but this really applies. This isn't just this school, right? It's to any leased school in any borough. Like, I think that this issue should be shared with others because it's a bigger issue.
All right. Chris.
Thank you. I want to thank Kit and Katie for writing this letter. It was an incredible committee meeting with a lot of information. It was incredibly dense to break it up. echoing Lowell's sentiment about making sure everyone gets CC'd on there. But want to say thank you to Gail. It'd be fantastic to have the High School for Environmental Studies have a permanent home in Hell's Kitchen. It's a education equity issue that we're dealing with citywide, but if we can highlight it here in Hell's Kitchen, I think it'll go a long way. Thank you very much for your hard work on this letter.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, transportation. Christine, 3 letters. Bring us home. But you got to take yourself off mute first.
So those 3 letters you have, they are fairly quick. Is there any question about the letters?
No questions. I don't see. Okay.
Okay.
Then we're okay. All right. We're going to do our roll call vote. You all know the rules. We've been doing this for months.
Twee has a question. Twee has a question.
Oh, Twee has a question. I'm sorry, I missed it. Go ahead, Twee. Type in your question.
The chat.
Yeah, type in your question, Twee. While she's doing that, oh, she did it already. There you go. Item 13, we should specify advance notice so it cannot be defined as the day before or 30 minutes before. Perhaps notice. You okay with that?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
All right, the next point is grammatical. We would like as opposed to like. Second item, in item 13, can it be suggested that DOT use a current application process? What does that process look like for the surrounding large buildings and block associations?
What is 13? What?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
No, the process, Twee, the process they are proposing is that they are going to install those loading zone as needed. Okay, so the process is going to be, we will notify in advance, they will notify, and if we say there is a problem, that would be an exception process. Otherwise, they will not come to us.
All right, Les has a question now also. I think he was having problems. I think this is item number 15. Isn't cash legal tender that cannot be denied?
Well, they are denying it. So, that's why we are saying you have to take it.
Right. There are a lot of places that won't take cash now because of COVID.
Right, but that's the MTA. I mean, that's part of the things they need to do.
Yep. Carrie?
You're on mute, Carrie.
Sorry about that. This is not regarding the letter for 14, but really just a question about the links in general on 8th Avenue. And if they're not being relocated, are they staying?
Well, I guess so.
So if we wanted them not to be there, what would we do?
We have to go back to Gail's and request that they are removed, and then see whether we need to find new locations if they need to be relocated.
Yeah, I will say that the local community has made clear that they want those links just gone.
Yeah.
I know 10th Avenue doesn't want them, Christine, but 8th Avenue doesn't want them to stay either.
Well, I want to just say that, like, because I live right around the corner from one of them, and then another one another block away. But the letter itself states that, there are all sorts of problems with them on 8th Avenue. So you don't want them. We don't want them on 10th Avenue either. I totally agree. However, it doesn't address the fact that there are all sorts of problems with them on 8th Avenue.
Well, the letter we have on 8th Avenue say we don't want them. Okay. Then we got an amended letter which said, we suggest that maybe they should go to those locations, right? Then the people which were on those locations say, we don't want them there. So now we are back to finding a place, or hoping that Gail, I don't know whether Gail is still there, Gail can negotiate that those be removed without replacement. And that's an option as well.
Yeah, Christine, wouldn't we be better off just saying, these suck on 8th Avenue. We don't want them on 10th Avenue. Just get rid of them entirely.
Well, we've already said that. We have already said we don't want them on 8th Avenue. This letter was just to address the issue of nominating lists.
Understood, but why can't we reiterate that, you know, all you're doing is moving the problem from 8th Avenue to 10th Avenue. They don't belong on 10th Avenue any more than they belong on 8th Avenue. See our prior letter.
Yeah, we can say that.
Thank you. I totally agree. Thank you. And if I can help try to get rid of them on 8th Avenue, I'd be happy to.
Jesse, Pamela Wolf has her hand raised. If you could bring her over after emailing and saying she wasn't joining us tonight.
Pamela Wolf is, I don't mean to be difficult, but Pamela Wolf is technically not a full board member, and you're in the working session.
Is she a public member of this committee?
Member of the board, not of the...
she's a member of Chelsea Land Use, right? Yeah. All right. I'm sorry. Pamela, I got confused. I was trying to get you in, but...
I don't mean to be difficult, but...
No, you're right. I got confused as to which committee we were discussing here, so... Betty had her hand up.
Christine, for this letter 14 for the links, is it that DoIT makes the decision about where these are located or not located? Is DoIT the one?
No, the process is that the community recommends to Gail, and then Gail negotiates with DoIT on where the replacement would be.
I see. I didn't know that process.
The memorandum of understanding between Gail and DoIT says we will be able to remove some of them, but indeed we are going to try to find a location to put them instead, and to continue to generate revenue for DoIT, for the vendor. And that's the issue. The issue is, like, once you remove them, you need to find a replacement revenue.
How about 2nd Avenue?
Okay, thanks. That explains why the letter is addressed to Gail and not DoIT. Okay.
Yes, Gail is the only one who has the power to negotiate with UIHT on that.
The link queen.
The link queen.
Can I? Christine, were you accepting my comment as a friendly?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Anyone else?
Can I just say one thing? Well, I know we're late. I just want to say that all of this conversation and the fact that the community boards have any say in this and that Gail Brewer's office has an MOU signed is due to Christine Berthet. Berthet years ago was the one that saw the light at the end of the tunnel on this and said, if we don't get on board and be able to have a say in this, we're just going to see a new problem. We didn't recognize that maybe the problem was going to be a quality of life issue and community safety issue per se, but we did know that, we were going to have no say in how these things are being set up. And Christine beat the drum, and Gail heard her, and it took a long time to get all the legalese figured out, but it was really due to Christine's leading this charge and saying that we have to have a say in this when this happens. So I just
Thank you, Jesse. And Jesse was also instrumental. So this was a Jesse Christine team.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? All right. We're going to go to a roll call. The one thing I'm going to say before we go to the roll call is the roll call is not a permanent record, and Jesse needs a permanent record of your votes. So fill out your vote sheets as you were doing the roll call, or incur my wrath. That's the best I'm going to get. And now I'm turning this over to Mike Noble and Leslie Bogosian Murphy.
Okay, I'll read and Leslie is going to write. We'll start with Sarah Appleton.
Yes or no?
Christine.
Yes or no? Oh.
Gwen, I don't think Gwen is here, is she?
I've not heard from her all night.
Okay. Leslie.
Yes on all. And Christine, excellent letter about the money handling with the MTA. Thank you.
Yeah. Viren.
Yes or no?
Jessica.
Yes to all.
Dale. Dale Corvino, you're still here, right?
No, he's gone.
Gone. Judith Dayhill, I don't believe is here tonight either. Martin Ducott.
Yes on all.
Paul Devlin.
Yes on all.
Tina.
Yes on all.
Pete Diaz.
Yes on all.
Brett Furfer. I didn't see him.
No, Brett's not here tonight.
Elzora.
Yes on all.
Wendy Gonzalez.
Yes on all.
David Holoka.
Yes on all.
Frank.
Yes on all.
Josephine.
Yes on all.
Carrie.
Yes on all.
Blake.
Yes on all.
Is Bird here tonight?
Yes on all.
Okay, Chris.
I hope you feel better, and Black Lives Matters. Yes and all.
All right, thank you. Jeffrey.
Aye on all.
Betty.
Yes and all.
Sarah Mills.
Yes to all.
Myself, yes to all. JD.
Yes to all. Thank you.
Maria. Maria Ortiz.
Was here.
She's here. She was just texting me. She's here. Is she here?
Maria.
Come back to her.
Okay. Alan Oster.
Yes on all.
Brad.
Yes on all.
Rhonda is not here. Twee is going to post hers, is she?
Yeah, Twee, can you
I see yes to all on the chat.
Yes on all, and she's going to email in her votes.
Okay. Joe.
And Maria says yes to all. She posted that as well.
Okay.
President eligible number 8, yes on all others.
Okay. Sabrina.
Yes to all.
Dolores.
Yes on all.
Brian Sokal.
Yes to all.
David Solnick. I don't see him. Katie Stokes.
Yes on all.
Kit.
Yes on all.
Marty Treat, I don't see him either. Hector. Hector
Yes on all.
Vasquez. Okay. Rob Walker. Rob, I saw you earlier.
I'm sorry, I just had to unmute. No to 3, 4, and 5. Yes to all the rest.
David Warren. David Warren. David was here.
He's not here.
Left. Leslie Williams.
Les has posted yes to all in the chat.
Okay. Colin Wright.
Yes to all. Thank you.
And Lowell Kern.
Yes to all.
That's it. Maria.
I don't think I was called.
Oh, James Wallace. Oh, James, I'm so sorry. Oh, my God. Okay, James. No.
That's fine. May God bless America. God bless my fellow community board members. Yes to all.
Okay. Too many W's in this list. I'm sorry, James.
We'll see if we can do something about that when the reapplications come.
Yes. We got to get rid of a W. Okay.
All right. Thank you all. Let's go watch and hope that the Capitol is still standing. And
Wants a motion to adjourn, so motion to adjourn.
Second that motion.
Oh, moved.
Thank you all.
Your vote sheets.
Thank you.
All right, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.